Chapter 483, Plot. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Ha ha ha, you finally noticed, said James with an eerie smile as he rushed toward Edward with unparalleled speed. He concentrated his aura on his fist, preparing a punch capable of doing devastating destruction to a star. However, Edward instantly cast a gravity spell that increased the surrounding gravity by 100,000 times that of Earth, crushing James on the floor. Hokuto, yelled Edward, and his dragon spirit manifested in this place, with all its glory. Deal with him. The dragon nodded before using its claws to create layers of barriers upon James, sealing him and all his powers. In the meantime, Edward had already left. He activated his cosmic awareness and sensed danger originating from one of the other demi-planes. Without wasting time, he used his space-time rules to force his way inside. As soon as he arrived at his destination, he knew he was at the correct place. Someone was floating in the air with countless enchantments on the ground and in the air. Wentworth, said Edward with gritted teeth. He knew this arcanist. His name was Edward Wentworth III. He was not a tower master despite reaching tier 7. However, Edward remembered his theory on the relationship between memories, the spirit, the mind, and the soul. He talked to the latter and chose to call him Wentworth since they had the same first name. You're too late, said Wentworth before a terrifying energy wave emanated from his body. Such a spell will not only affect Earth but destroy the solar system and the surrounding dozens of star systems, thought Edward, not hiding his anger. I guess I should admire you, you can be calm even in such a situation, said Wentworth with a sneer. Then, a smile appeared on his face as he watched his masterpiece complete. Edward raised his hand, and Wentworth shook his head in pity. A green magic circle appeared before Edward. Then, everything stopped. The green flames that Wentworth would ravage the center of the empire, killing billions of people, Wentworth himself, the magic circles in the ground and sky, everything stopped moving. Well, except for two people. Time magic? On this scale, muttered Wentworth, ignoring the fact only his mouth could move. It was not surprising the Emperor could use time magic since it is one of the most powerful and fascinating magic in the cosmos. There is a list in the Empire of Arcanists with the talent and capabilities of using time magic. And Wentworth knew that amongst these people, even the Empire only had a rudimentary control over time magic. The latter might be able to affect objects the size of an apple, but nothing bigger. Furthermore, it could not yet affect living things. Ha ha ha, everyone underestimates how many secrets you have, they don't know how truly scary you are, said Wentworth with a deep sigh. Regretting now? Asked Edward as he flew over to him. There is no point in regret, losing is losing. Is this what this is about? You want to win over me, said Edward, controlling his anger. Maybe, maybe not. So, what did Guznad offer you for such a betrayal? Wentworth did not answer him, but Edward did not mind. You should understand you cannot hide the truth from me, persuaded Edward. You're arrogant, so I doubt you would allow anyone to place any seals in your soul. So, there should be a contract. However, there are hundreds, if not thousands, ways to annul or bypass a contract. So, I will spare your last dignity if you tell the truth. Wentworth was silent for a moment. He offered me control over a plane. Edward squinted his eyes. So, the rumors are true, you do already know about other planes. After Havika created his mathematical model and became a tower master, the existence of other planes was almost confirmed among high-level arcanists. There were even rumors the royal family had already discovered planes and were using their resources for their own. A few people even guessed that the emperor suddenly disappeared and returned with a bunch of new knowledge because of conquering other planes. So, you thought your life would be more successful after conquering one plane. I have seen with my own eyes. Most magical civilizations cannot reach beyond tier 4 because of the lack of knowledge, said Wentworth. Mages simply do not have enough knowledge to increase their soul strength and reach higher tiers. So, they have to resort to drinking potions, weird ceremonies, and slow and inefficient meditation methods to increase their soul. And while they also have to worry about the increase of mana, most human mages cannot reach tier 4, where they can increase their lifespan and die a mediocre life. Why are you so powerful? Asked Wentworth with red eyes. It's because you have an entire empire researching and creating knowledge for you. Since you can do it, why can't I? Edward shook his head. Many of you believe it is easy to do what I did. However, you're the first one to hide your research like your life depends on it. With such a mindset, how could any of you create something like the Arcane Empire? He did not hide his sneer. Don't be a hypocrite. You also hide many things. Yes, I do. But what I do hide is minuscule compared to what I share. Wentworth did not know what to answer. Most arcanists agreed much knowledge in the empire should not be available to the public or anyone for that matter, for example, time magic. However, with an affordable price and the signing of the appropriate contract, any tier 4 arcanists can buy such research. He knew all of this was in the name of further developing magic and pushing its boundary. This does not change anything, argued Wentworth. However, his voice lacked certain convictions. Let me ask you, did it ever occur to you that Guznad was tricking you? I'm not stupid. So, I made sure there was nothing wrong with the contract. Did he offer you a tier 7 plane? What do you mean? You do know planes have levels, don't you? I wasn't aware. So, he only offered you a plane. What are you getting at? Wentworth snapped. Guznad could have just given you a tier 9 plane. With your current strength, you would only be discovered by the plane will and instantly annihilated. Wentworth's face was ugly to look at. From your reaction, I'm guessing you don't even know what a plane will is. Edward shook his head. He could tell what kind of person Wentworth was, full of ambitions, arrogant, and yet, extremely ignorant while thinking he was smart. There is a reason higher beings do not know how to deal with lower ones besides strength. Their vision, experience, and knowledge are on a completely different level. Wentworth's face underwent numerous changes. Are you going to kill me? Yes, replied Edward. You don't have to say anything more. You've touched my bottom line, so you have to die, continued Edward. However, you can be reassured that your death will not be in vain since I will make an example of you. What do you mean? Your story will be used in classes throughout the Empire to teach young citizens of the consequences of trying to deal with devils, gods, or creatures of higher powers than themselves. You're going to use me as propaganda and brainwashing, yelled Wentworth. Well, I guess you could see it that way. Damn you. Wentworth's mouth became frozen in time, and Edward waved his hand to burn his body before sealing his soul in a diamond. Then, he dealt with the green flame spell. Finally, he resumed the time that was stopped. Chapter 484, Royal Response. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Edward teleported to James' demiplane. And as he expected, Hokuto had already dealt with the threat by sealing the corrupted Arcanist. The dragon spirit handed him a small cube before disappearing. Edward could hear a sound coming from the cube in his palm. Any last word? What did you do? What are you all right? Asked James. I guess these are your last words, sneered Edward. You don't need to threaten me. I know how you operate. You will try every means to get more information from me, but I guarantee you won't succeed. James knew this man very well, this a person whose core values involved the word value. He loves geniuses because of their values. He embraces all races, ethnicities, and species because of their value as a collective. So, since he was more valuable alive, James believed he would be fine. And as long as he can withstand the torture, it's only a matter of time before the Empire falls under the might of the Abyss Plane. Oh, silly James, you haven't realized your true value yet, said Edward with a smirk. Wait, you want to use me as an experimental material. Otherwise, you are the first corrupted Arcanist capable of using dark mana. Your existence is way more valuable than any information I could extract from you. Furthermore, I'm sure your soul already has the mark of the Abyss Will. And with my current strength and knowledge, it would be futile to try to deal with it. However, it is worth studying. No, you can't do this. The Empire's law forbade using other Arcanists as experimental materials. If you do this, the royal family cannot survive the backlash. Your ironclad rule or control of the Empire will be shaken. You underestimate my control over my country, rebutted Edward. Plus, this law has a loophole. Such a protection is not afforded to heinous criminals or traitors such as yourself. Edward loved and cherished his empire. After all, it is his baby that he spent years building from the ground up. However, he did not need the Empire as much as it needed him. If people revolted against his reign, he could just begin a new and better empire on another galaxy, plane, or universe. The Arcane Library, which contains 90% of the entire Empire's knowledge and technology, will make the process 100 times easier. So, if he needs to abandon everything from Earth and start from scratch, he is more than capable of doing so. Edward placed James away before teleporting back to his palace. And as soon as he arrived, he accepted all the calls waiting for him. More than a dozen screens appeared before him as the royal family and the members of the Illuminati called him simultaneously. What happened? Asked Amelia. Why was time stopped? All the people present have 3 magical items they must carry with them at all times, a anti-time stopping item, anti-instant death item, and a void teleportation spell item that stores a small portion of void energy that can break through any space blockade spells, allowing them to run away in a dangerous situation. As such, they were the few people capable of moving during Edward's time stop. Of course, the main reason is that they were not the main target. Edward explained the entire situation to everyone. How did they bypass our defense system? Asked Dumbledore. Has the Intelligence and Divination Department become so incapable? Asked Grindelwald. Don't blame the Divination Department, we're already overworked, chimed Luna. Recently, their department received 2 new seers, Maiko Satoru and Yami's sister, the Divine Maiden. With these 2, things have eased a lot in their department. However, Luna has been easing them into their station so as not to place them under too much pressure. I'm sure your highness is doing her best. However, you can also see the consequences of failures, replied Grindelwald, and Luna had to agree. In some ways, their department is the first line of defense of the Empire, and their failure almost caused the destruction of the central area of the Empire. Such a blow would not destroy the Empire but would cripple it for the next few hundred years. And as long as Guznad took this opportunity, it could truly be the end. We need to indeed expand the amount of diviners. But you know very well such talent is rare. Expend the pools we have to choose from. Do you mean the multiverse? Asked Luna. But, we are currently banished from accessing it. You can also go to other planes, explained Edward. Plus, I was referring to the Dark Multiverse. Dark Multiverse? What's that? I already updated the information in the library. You can check it. Forget that for now. We have not discovered how Guznad bypassed our defenses. If that problem is not solved, we cannot solve the issue from the core, commented Olivier. If I guess correctly, it should be through dream, said Edward. Dream revelation. Olivier suddenly remembered that intelligence named Albert. Indeed, that seems to be the most common way the gods talk to their followers. Now we know the method. What solutions do we have? Asked Amelia. We can just create a dream dimension as a barrier to the Empire's territory, suggested Rowena. This should be no problem for Chloe. That's a good idea. With this dimension, it's possible to intercept any dream revelations from gods or higher beings in the future, agreed Amelia. Since they were destined to be the enemy of the gods, they needed to be prepared for all possibilities. More than that, we can use dreams to gather information, assassination, and even plant suggestions into people's minds, added Grindelwald. Such a method could create major backlash if discovered, swiftly argued Dumbledore, who opposes using the dream for such a method. Although he supported the Empire after seeing the cruelty of the universe, he also did not want things like severe monitoring to become common in the Empire. And many people like Lily and Flitwick agreed with him. Plus, most arcanists stop sleeping and dreaming after a certain tier. This method is not effective. If they don't dream, we make them dream, added Grindelwald. There is no need to go this far on how people, countered Rowena. But, we don't need such restraint on foreign powers. Set up the Dimension and Relevant Department, Edward said, making a decision. We need dream aurors, intelligence gatherers, and assassins. We don't have to use it on the citizens, unless there is reasonable cause. Very well, uttered Amelia, since this is her department. Now, how do we deal with the outside reaction? Although only these people were not affected by the spell, the other arcanists quickly found something was wrong, especially since only the time of planet Earth stopped. With communication with other colonies, their own intuition, and the input of the few known arcanists capable of using time magic, people soon discovered what happened. Tell them the truth, said Edward. If the news that we can stop time around an entire planet, many people will not easily accept such a thing. This could lead to chaos, said Amelia with a frown. These powerful arcanists will not easily accept that someone could so easily control their lives, even though they already know this to be a fact once the floating cities appear. We can minimize the impact if we say it was an artifact from the Time Aurors department, said Edward. These people might more easily accept this fact if they don't know he did it with his own strength. Plus, I plan to have a chat with them. Once I'm done, they won't dare openly complain, continued Edward. The Time Auror is a semi-open secret. So, it would be easier to accept, agreed Amelia. The more important thing is after this incident, many of these people will begin to study anti-time magic, leading to many brilliant ideas and developments, said Edward with glowing eyes. Everyone nodded with him. All right, you can continue with your own thing. Luna, stay, I have something to say to you, said Edward. Chapter 485, More Control. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Is this about the divination department? Asked Luna. You should know things are beyond my ability. No, Edward shook his head. I wouldn't blame you for something like that. Oh, then, what did you want? Edward paused, his hesitation obvious from his facial expression. Luna looked at him weirdly. Are you going to ask me to do something morally outrageous again? Edward's mouth almost twitched. It's not as bad as you make it sound. What is it this time? She asked with an exasperated sigh. I just had an idea on how to boost the strength of the divination department. And that would be. Edward no longer hesitated and replied, take countless variants of yourself from the multiverse, purify their seer bloodline before connecting their minds together, forming an amplifier, allowing them their ability to reach new heights. You want to use my variants from the multiverse as some sort of battery or divination artifact. When you put it that way, it sounds worse than it sounds. And how exactly do you think that sounds? We can erase their memories so they don't feel any pain. Luna's bloodline was special, making it impossible to clone her. And even the successful clones lost her seer abilities, so this plan has to use different versions of herself from the multiverse. That sounds even worse, argued Luna. They would be nothing but objects once you succeed. We will be using the versions from the dark multiverse, meaning they would all be evil. And that won't make the situation any better. Based on what you said about the dark multiverse, these people turned evil because of one or two events that went wrong in our timelines. In other words, they are the way they are because of fate and circumstances. Edward groaned a little. In that case, think of the long term. If you agree to this project, it can increase your chances of reaching tier 11. You know what is at stake and what is waiting for us in the future. Don't try to guilt-trip me. We don't even have a proper method of reaching tier 11. So, this project will not affect the general situation. Edward looked her in the eyes for a few seconds before sighing. Then, what about a compromise? Instead of using your variants, we use Professor Trelawney. Although her divination bloodline is nothing compared to yours, we can make up for the gap using numbers. Plus, we don't have to tell her anything. Luna frowned for a moment. I'll think about it. Then, she immediately ended the conversation, leaving Edward alone on his throne. Morgana, what do you think the consequences would be if I did it behind her back? The little elf appeared before him. She has great control over the department, so it's very unlikely to hide it from her. And once she finds the truth, well, the best case scenario is she ignores you for a few years, possibly hundreds of years, and the worst case scenario is she divorces you. Edward groaned softly as he muttered, so severe, huh? Boss, if I may say something. Go ahead. You know there is no need for reservation between us. Your current reaction is probably the result of your insecurity that the Empire's defense system was so easily breached. In other words, your paranoia makes you subconsciously fear similar things will happen again. So, you want to do whatever necessary to ensure it doesn't, even at the cost of your personal relationship. Edward paused. You're probably right. I usually am, said Morgana with a smile, trying to lighten the mood. She knew her best was in a delicate state after experiencing the illusion formations. So, his paranoia was at an all-time high, fearing the things that happened in the illusion would come true. Well, smartass, I'm glad you're here to keep me in check, said Edward as he rolled his eyes. Let's get back to work. Did you send the invitations? Yes. Everybody is already waiting. Did anyone not show up? No, but a few people seemed deep into important research and sent a representative. That's fine, nodded Edward. Let's begin. Thousands of screens appeared before him, showing him all types of arcanists, humans, other races, old, young, women, men, and some people who even looked like children for odd reasons. All the people present were people who had a private demiplane, so their ranks ranged from Tier 4 to Tier 7. As soon as these people appeared, they saluted the Emperor as a form of politeness. However, after seeing Edward's nonchalant, almost cold response, they knew something must have happened. Less than 30 minutes ago, arcanists James Carter and Edward Wentworth III betrayed the Empire and sold their soul to Guznad. Wentworth almost succeeded in using a Tier 8 spell, destroying the entire solar system. The faces of these arcanists changed. Their hearts trembled as they realized how close they were to death. Among these people, few people could survive the sudden destruction of the solar system. So, the result of such a terrorist act would be catastrophic. Your Majesty, is this why there was an anomaly of time stopping recently? Asked an arcanist. Yes. Everyone quieted down, analyzing the ramifications of this event. A few smart people had already guessed the reason for this meeting and were unhappy. I made the use of demiplanes public to give you personal space to do your research. I basically allow each of you to have your own small country where you have absolute power, including military powers in the forms of golem legions. But what is the result? Many people were against such loose control of the demiplanes, and many others were against allowing private use altogether. But Edward proceeded because, in the future, arcanists will travel to other planes and, eventually, other universes. So, they need to be a walking civilization to conquer, visit, or explore these places. So, he allowed them to develop to prepare for the future. Anyway, private demiplanes will be more strictly regulated from now, and the threshold for possessing one will be raised. We will place a dimensional wall to separate all demiplanes from the Empire's territory to prevent the previous situation. So, be prepared that it will be more difficult for you to enter the territory from your demiplane. These arcanists secretly cursed in their mind. Although the Emperor used sophisticated words like more strictly regulated, they knew what these words actually meant. The intelligence department will now secretly infiltrate their demiplanes and monitor them. After all, they need resources for their experiment or raising their legion, so it's easy to infiltrate. Even the ones who do not allow people in their space and only use golems did not think they were safe. With the royal family's capabilities, it's not impossible for them to secretly control many of their golems without anyone else being aware. Additionally, that dimensional wall will also affect them as it will make traveling to Earth more challenging, limiting their connection to other arcanists. The exchange of ideas and knowledge is the cornerstone of any powerful arcanist. So, most of them will have great connections, friends, or acquaintances with people in many fields. If this decision was made any time before today, they could protest, even banding together and using public opinion to protest such a decision. However, these cunning casters knew it was impossible to do so with the betrayal of these two. If they tried anything now, they would become pawns for the Emperor to display his power and warn others. I have said what I needed to, said Edward. The meeting is finished, and you're dismissed. He waved his hand to close all these screens, not giving anyone the chance to ask any more questions. Chapter 486, Balance. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Edward's meeting with the people with private demiplanes did not spread to the general public. However, it spread amongst other arcanists, especially the Tower Masters living in Academy City. Acquiring a tower in that city is one of the highest honors of the Empire. It is a status of strength, power, and acknowledgement of one's achievements. And after receiving the tower, most people will stay there and do their research. As such, it's not a problem for them to have one or multiple demiplanes on the towers. However, there are political implications behind the towers. With all these talented arcanists in one place, it is easier to monitor and essentially control them. Many people do not like such a fact. So, many tower masters would leave their towers empty and have their research laboratory in their own residence across Earth or other places in the Empire's territory. The Empire's tolerance for these people is very high. After all, they are still people who follow the rules but do not like to be under strict management or regulations. However, there is a group of tower masters who prefer to use private demiplanes. These people do not only want privacy but absolute control and power over a domain, hence the demiplanes. Based on a tower master's choice, they will be placed on a watch list of different levels. The lowest level is those who stay in Academy City. These people are often supporters of the Empire, or at the very least, support order and not abuse their godlike power. The second level involved those who stayed in the Empire's territory and had deep connections with many of their peers. Finally, there are the people with private demiplanes, the group full of ambitious individuals. After the news spread, many of these tower masters in the third level acted. Some returned to Academy City, while a few also gave up their private demiplane. These people were smart and understood the Emperor's tolerance of them had lowered. As the brightest mind of the Empire, their value also corresponds to a dangerous threat. As such, despite the Emperor's love for talent, he might begin to secretly liquidate them. The Ghost Squad was not a joke. If those lunatics decided to quietly eliminate them, only a few people might survive. Well, that was the thought of many people prior to recent events. Now, people knew the Empire had a way to stop time for the entire planet. Although they guessed the price for deploying such technology must be enormous, it would not matter to the Emperor if he truly wanted to eliminate them. So, as an act of precaution and to send a signal of their obedience or change of mind. After his chat with Luna and Morgana, Edward spent the next few hours checking the media and Skynet to check people's reactions to recent events. The word traitor has become a little sensitive during this war. However, the populace was shocked that someone of that caliber betrayed the Empire and became a terrorist. Luckily, everything was still under control, and the people did not panic. So, Edward created another clone to work on the dimensional wall that separated those people with demiplanes. Finally, he decided to take a break by taking a long bath and sleeping. It has been years since he slept, if he did not count fun times with any of his wives. So, he chose to relax for the next few hours until his meeting with the Black Clover squads. After arriving at the destination, everyone was already there, the captains, Asta and Yuno, Queen Lilopeka, representatives from the Eastern continent, and many other people. As soon as Edward appeared, everyone was either drinking, eating, or chatting. However, he could sense a weird mood or atmosphere in the venue. Sir Wizard King. No, I mean, His Majesty, the Arcane Emperor, said one of the vice-captains who first saw Edward. Everyone finally noticed him and saluted together. There was disharmony with all these people talking together because some people called Wizard King while others called Arcane Emperor. A few people started calling him one name before changing midway. Be at ease, said Edward with a smile before heading near a bonfire and sitting on a log. He immediately became the center of attention but did not pay attention to such a thing. After sitting down, his adopted daughter, Charmy, handed him a large piece of meat, followed by a bowl of pasta and rice. Thanks, said Edward as he ate ravenously. Edward ate his food, and Charmy kept giving him until he finished the dessert she gave him. Finally, he glanced at the group. You guys have become boring, said Edward, and no one knew how to answer these words, except one. Can you blame them, said Yami, who still had his rugged look while smoking his cigarette. He even ignored his sister, who was secretly kicking him as a warning. It's good to see you haven't changed, said Edward. That's yet to be determined, replied Yami. Edward nodded. I'm sure many of you have questions. I will take this time to answer you. No one immediately spoke. So, after an awkward silence for a few seconds, they looked at Yami. However, he shrugged his shoulders to indicate not to rely on him. I will speak, said Fugilian, who walked to the front. Sir, to be honest, I think the majority of us are lost. What is our purpose in this world? Safety? From our observation, the Aurors, Earth Defense Force, and the Imperial Navy are more than enough to protect not only this planet but the territory of the Empire. As magic knights, they used to protect their kingdoms. But now, they seem to be useless. Maybe research, continued Fugilian. However, most of us are fighters and not good at research. Furthermore, what we can contribute in general to the technology tree of the Empire is very little. So, what is our purpose? Edward saw a few people nodding their heads, and he could tell the majority of people present agreed with Fuglian's words. So, he took a moment to organize his words. I brought you all here for many reasons. The majority of you are extremely gifted individuals. And after integrating into the Empire and using its resources, you can become some of the strongest arcanists alive. Edward squinted his eyes. The Empire is destined to rule over this universe. Our tentacles will stretch to every corner, and many people, the gods, to be specific, will not allow such a thing. So, I need as many talented individuals as possible for this grand war that's coming. And that's not the only reason I brought you back. To be exact, there are two things that only your team can accomplish. Everyone focused. The first one is the Plane Expedition Legion. The Empire has recently discovered the existence of other planes. You can think of them as places like the Underworld and Elysium from your dimension. I will create a legion of people to infiltrate certain planes and slowly rise from the ground up. The members of these regions need to be talented, willing to take risks, and flexible enough to succeed in such a dangerous mission. Many of your magic fits the requirement for this legion, explained Edward, who suddenly paused as he took a drink from Charmy and caressed her head. And the final purpose I brought you here is to bring balance to the Empire. Balance? I don't think anything needs balance, said Fuglian. The Empire is divided into Scholar and Battle Arcanist. Because of my desire for more knowledge, Scholar Arcanists have a higher status, are stronger, and are more valued. Meanwhile, Battle Arcanists do the most dangerous jobs, receive less compensation, and have lower political and economic status. Unfortunately, the situation has reached a point where the balance is too one-sided. And that's where you come in. I will use you guys to raise the status of Battle Arcanists and reinstate the balance. Chapter 487, Bloodline Source. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. How exactly do you expect us to achieve such a thing? Asked Yami as he blew his smoke. In fact, you guys already have an equalizer, said Edward as he summoned his grimoire. Previously, only scholars could study and create spells. and as the creator of said spells, it was virtually impossible to surpass them under normal circumstances. Furthermore, they can use the spells to earn money and exchange resources. Battle mages did not have such luxury. At best, they could modify a spell, which can allow them to earn arcane points and coins, but they still had to pay for the copyrights. But now, things are different. With the Origin Grimoire in my control, battle mages can now create any spells based on their willpower, desires, and type of magic. So, even if they do not truly understand the spells, they can create them and use them like the scholars. And that's one of the few benefits of this thing. So, where do we fit in all this? Asked Nozel, who did not think things were as simple as they brought this grimoire magic system. Basically, I will make you into the beacon or symbol for battle mages. You need to defeat some of the most powerful scholars in the Empire, especially the ones who are advocates of scholar supremacy. You need to show the world that battle mages are no longer inferior to anyone else. And while you're in the spotlight, I will secretly manipulate things to weaken the scholars and raise the status of battle mages. The room quieted down for a few seconds before a burst of wild laughter echoed in everyone's ears. That sounds interesting, said Mirioliana. Isn't fighting? That's what we are best at. I'm glad you're confident, nodded Edward. However, things will not be as easy as you think. In this world, knowledge literally equals power. Scholars are more powerful than battle mages because they have a deeper understanding of the essence of magic. Furthermore, although they are called scholars, do not think they are a bunch of nerds stuck in a laboratory every day, with little to no battle experience. With virtual reality, they can acquire as many battle experiences as needed. And the majority of them will alter their memories during the experience to forget they are in a virtual world, allowing them to experience true life and death battles. Because of this, the one advantage that battle mages have, willpower, will not differ too much from these scholars. Everyone had a pondering look. Many people had the idea this assignment would be easy because of the reason Edward brought up. After all, the name scholar indicated many things. But now, they realized this was a nightmare-level mission. Why does it feel like these scholars were designed to be all-encompassing? Said Yami. That's because they were, said Edward. I should have guessed as much. Edward smiled wryly and did not answer. He created the concept of scholars to ensure the Empire focused most of its effort on developing magic and technology. And in the early stages, he also wanted them to be the mainstream of the Empire, so he guided them by making sure they had no weakness in combat. Sir, do you have a specific plan for this mission? Asked Fuego Leon. Yes, and you will have my full support. However, you guys should also be prepared to become stars. If you're uncomfortable with the spotlight or wish your life to remain private, it's best not to participate. We will discuss amongst ourselves and decide, nodded Fuego Leon. That's good. Any more questions? Me, I have a question. Edward looked at the overexcited short man and secretly smiled after seeing Asta had not changed much after so many years. The Empire's centenary anniversary will be in 23 years. If you defeat me, you can take my position as the Arcane Emperor. Really? That's the law. Asta's eyes twinkle as he finds a new goal for himself. He became the Wizard King, and soon, he will become the Arcane Emperor. Edward smiled as he continued the party, however, the mood was much lighter. He checked on the integration of the two continents from that universe into Pangaea and how ordinary people were adapting to the recent changes. He focuses especially on the dwarves and elves. After settling everything, Edward left early to see an old friend. He teleported to a room where a woman was watching intently at a screen. She was startled by his sudden appearance and almost released a devastating spell. Oh, it's you, said Fleur before nodding. What's wrong with you? Asked Edward. Just tired. When was the last time you rested? A while. Edward frowned. Fleur had returned from the Black Clover trip with him. However, she's been doing research since then. The worrying part is that Edward sensed time acceleration in this room, and she appeared to have not slept for a while. You need to rest. No, I'm so close. If I succeed, it will be a monumental creation on Par with your floating city. And you might succeed if you rest and revert your mind to its peak state. Fleur could not find the words to argue back. So, she nodded and went to take a deep sleep. Normally, deep sleep of only 3 hours is enough for a normal human to function for 48 hours without any problem. And the effect is exponentially better for arcanists with high spiritual strength. However, Fleur slept for 24 hours straight while in deep sleep. Feeling better? Asked Edward, who was waiting for her. Yes, I needed that, said Fleur as she gave him a peck on the cheek. That's good. So, what got you so excited? Fleur's eyes immediately lit up as she hurriedly showed him a screen that displayed a sleeping dragon, Albion. It's been a while since I last saw that overgrown lizard, commented Edward. He placed the Dragon King inside a world gate located in the void outside of this universe. He did not want the dragons to locate him and discover the existence of the Empire. I have found the bloodline source of the dragons, said Fleur as she showed him another picture of another dragon. This one had an aura of vicissitude and power emanating from them. It had golden and purple scales, what appeared to be a crown on its head, laying on a mountain of treasure. No, a world of treasure. Oddly though, the dragon's size was not too big. This dragon should be the origin of all dragon bloodlines, explained Fleur. He is also the controller of their bloodline source, which is an unknown dimension where dragons keep their memories, knowledge, and inheritance. This dragon might be tier 11. Or, at the very least, very close to that level, commented Edward. From his information, there should be no Tier 11 entities in the cosmic faith plane. However, he understood that nothing is ever as simple as stated. For example, why have those top planes never invaded? Their fear of the Magus race is indeed the primary reason, but there should also be some things or beings that make them careful. And this dragon might be one of these beings. Since you found their bloodline source, did you manage to steal their inheritance? No, replied Fleur as she shook her head. I only acquire some useless memories. Oh, is there a reason? Their defense is more powerful than I anticipated. Furthermore, I have a feeling that this dragon might detect me if I try. According to Fleur's analysis, if she was not outside of the universe and had an advantage, she might not even have succeeded in acquiring these small memories. Do you have any idea? Not yet. The best way is to have him tell you himself. I see, said Edward as he watched the sleeping Albion. This should not be why you were so obsessed. You're right. I have found something truly remarkable. Chapters list next. Chapter 488, Fleur's Path. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. I have found my path forward, said Fleur as she summoned a bunch of schematics. My plan is to create my bloodline source, becoming the ancestor of bloodline. She showed Edward how she would build a special dimension similar to the dragons to keep the memories and inheritance. This is the first step of this plan. The second step is controlling an entire plane, preferably Tier 10. Then, I will have all the people on that plane implanted with my bloodline. Through the bloodline source, I can have them research bloodlines and related knowledge for me. I can take some mana and soul strength from them, allowing me to reach Tier 10 at the fastest speed. And if something eventually happens to me, I can use the dragon's method and reincarnate by having someone of close bloodline inherit all my knowledge and memories. What do you think? She looked at him, hoping for his input and approval. So, you've basically created the bloodline version of Faith. Fleur paused before chuckling. I guess I did. With the way she will be using bloodline, it is indeed similar to the gods' faith and their divine kingdom. What do you think of my plan? There are many advantages. Your path to Tier 10 will be quick and without much problem. You will have an entire world dedicated to researching bloodlines, spells, and knowledge for you. If done correctly, you could probably make it so you could borrow the power of your bloodline descendants. However, this is also a double-edged sword. The right person could use these descendants to hurt since you're connected by bloodline. I've thought of this. So, the bloodline source will also need a buffer or countermeasures to prevent that from happening, nodded Fleur. It's good you're cautious. The second issue is your bloodline itself. The Vila bloodline is an off-branch of the succubus bloodline, and it's of lower status. You don't have to worry much since you now have the succubus bloodline. However, I have recently started to believe that succubi are not native to the cosmic faith plane and originated from the abyss plane. And there is a high chance there is already a bloodline source for succubus. Your project could lead to trouble and confrontation with it. This problem is easy to fix, said Fleur quickly. I can create a unique bloodline by fusing the former Vila, the current succubus, and the succubus bloodline from the Konosuba world. Better yet, I can hunt succubus bloodline from other universes to add, ensuring my bloodline source is unique and not related or influenced by the one from the abyss. That's good. In that case, I recommend adding another creature to your bloodline, nodded Edward. Do you fear there might be a succubus bloodline source for all universes in the void? Yes. There is a high chance that powerful creatures like dragons and succubi have a being on par with Merlin, who is the source of all bloodlines in the Omniverse. So, it's not a bad idea to prepare for this possibility. You make a good point. One of the things many people, including their family, admired about their husband is his cautious nature that bordered on extreme paranoia. However, such nature has prevented countless dangers and catastrophes with many dangerous experiments in the Empire. Otherwise, when there were not enough restrictions and control at the beginning of the Empire, the wizards were doing many dangerous experiments that laid the foundation for today's success. If not for Edward's caution, the Empire might have been destroyed before it was even created. You've done a great job. But this does not seem enough for you to be this obsessed, added Edward. You're right. The real source of my excitement is I have found my way to Tier 11, said Fleur, not hiding her excitement. You want to use the bloodline source to control all your variants across the multiverse, asked Edward, who swiftly figured out the crux of her method. Correct. All of them should have the Vila's bloodline. Through this connection, I can turn them into me, thus achieving Tier 11 multiversal. That's brilliant, said Edward, not hiding his shock and happiness. He hasn't found his way to achieve Tier 11 yet since he only has some ideas. However, Fleur already created her method, and it's something unique to her. Right. She did not stop smiling. We can begin right after this war. You can use Netheril to conquer a Tier 10 plane. No, one might not be enough to ensure no problem. Wait until I use the resources from the dark multiverse to create a second and even third Tier 10 floating city. We should have more reassurance. Edward could see that Fleur might be the fastest of the family to reach Tier 10 and 11. And once she succeeds, she will become the de facto protector of the Empire while the others catch up. As for him, he will be stuck in Tier 8 for a while until he deals with the soul limit. Then, reaching Tier 10 will be easy and quick. Afterward, he has to begin his research on becoming the perfect Tier 11 and also turning Netheril into Tier 11 and higher. That's fine, nodded Fleur, who guessed what she was thinking. If she can reach Tier 11 as soon as possible, the Empire does not have to worry too much about the gods or threats from foreign planes. As for the Tier 8 soul limit, she can use divine energy or world sources to deal with the issue. How far has the design for your bloodline source reached? Asked Edward. The dimension itself and all its abilities are 80% complete. The only thing is to tweak a few things because I've discovered the dragon bloodline source has a special method to perfectly hide their dimension. And without direct understanding and connection of a Dragon King's bloodline, it's impossible to access. The hiding method is almost perfect. I'm trying to replicate it, and it's not going well, said Fleur. Take your time, said Edward. If you want a perfect hiding method, you can attempt using the void itself. Fleur's eyes lit up. Yes, I don't need to follow the dragon's methods. I can use my own method, which is even better. She felt excited, so she drew these notes down. What about the other aspect of the source? Continued Edward. I need to perfect my succubus bloodline and integrate so many things. It will take a while. You don't have to begin the project after the bloodline issue is solved. You can use your descendants to help your research. Although there will be some risks while using an incomplete bloodline, your method might be more efficient. And it's a good way to accelerate the entire project. However, I still need to go to other universes to gather bloodline samples. Let's make things simple and use the Akashic records. Won't that cost a lot? Yes, but it's worth it. Although we can instantly travel to other universes now, there is still some level of danger of traveling to the void. Plus, in the current situation, I can use Old Man Merlin's help to make the Akashic records more commendable. Edward wished nothing but for all his wives to become Tier 11 as quickly as possible because he knew they had intense competition. Many of the geniuses reincarnated from primordial Earth should have similar wives in the shape of Hermione, Fleur, Luna, and even others. However, after Tier 11, only one personality will be the dominant one, while the others will be clones. Although there are ways to cut off the connection to the main body after it becomes Tier 11, it will complicate things and prevent the clones from ever reaching Tier 11. So, if Fleur can be the first to become Tier 11, all the other Fleurs who are married to other reincarnators from primordial Earth will become clones. And these reincarnators will have no choice but to use methods like cutting off cause and effect and reincarnating into a brand new person with the same name and face but a different soul. However, these methods should have side effects. As you wish, nodded Fleur. All right, this should be everything for now. Let me talk to this old friend. Chapter 489, Albion. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Edward walked into a large room full of gold, silver, and jewelry. As soon as he entered, the gigantic dragon opened its eyes for a moment before closing them. Then, he opened both of them, raising his head as he gazed down. Tier 8? You're already Tier 8, his voice booming as a few piles of treasures scattered because of the vibration. How long since I last saw you? How could you become so powerful so quickly? No, there is something else. The towering beast who naturally sat at the top of the food chain began to sniff around Edward. What are you doing acting like a dog? Said Edward, bewildered. This scent, I know it. It's the scent of people that have come into contact with authority. Have you become a law magus? How is that possible? Law magus? Is that the name of the magus race who controls the law? Well, I always learn something new and interesting every time I come to see you. Answer my question, demanded the dragon. Calm down. Albion realized he was acting too rash, so he took a moment to breathe and calm down. You really became a law magus. Yes. The dragon paused for a moment. Prove it. You don't believe me. Honestly, it's far-fetched. I'm sure there are others in the universe. People can only control authority by achieving godhood, replied Albion. A few people from ancient species like the High Elves have become law magus, but they are rare. As for your human race, I can't say for sure, but I've never met one in my long years. But what about the dragon race? Albion looked at him but did not answer, and Edward shrugged his shoulders. Are you going to show me the proof? Asked the Thunder Dragon King. I can't. Why not? Asked the dragon with a frown. I thought you were all about equivalent exchange. What I said is more than enough for a proof demonstration. I'm not saying that I won't, but I can't. You should be able to figure out the reason for yourself. A look of realization dawned on the mighty magical beast. You succeeded, didn't you? You found a way to exit the astral realm and leave the universe. Yes, replied Edward. Previously, he never gave the dragon a direct answer, but he did not hesitate this time. How is that possible? Asked the dragon, not minding how many times he had said these words. The dragon race has been searching for a way to leave the universe for countless eons since they believed that's the path the Magus race walked. They divided the race into the Dragon Gods and the Dragon Temple to use the path of godhood and their original magical talent as a way to better understand the universe and accomplish their goals. Yet, after so many years, they have nothing to offer in their research. But a human from a part of the galaxy that is considered the ghetto actually succeeded. As much as I would want to take credit, the main reason for my success is luck. Oh, how so? I discovered the breach in reality that the Magus race used in a parallel dimension. After studying it, I developed the technology. I see. Wait, did you say parallel dimensions? Yes. You opened the gate to the multiverse. Yes, ages ago. Albion closed his eyes, trying to calm down. He did not know how to process his emotions. The multiverse was another failure of the dragon race, albeit not a complete one like their attempt to leave the astral realm. You must be a child of destiny, said Albion suddenly. That would explain all your anomalies. Child of destiny? What's that? Edward had heard the term before in the novels he read in Primordial Earth. However, he pretended to be confused. It is a universal mechanism very prevalent in the heavenly Dao plane. Every time the plane faced an invasion that it could not deal with, the plane would choose someone and bless them with unparalleled talent, luck, and destiny. And such a person is called a child of destiny. So, basically, the protagonist of a story, said Edward. Exactly. Such a protagonist will bring great development and changes to the plane, allowing them to deal with the upcoming invasion, nodded Albion as he gazed at him curiously. Although such a method is prevalent in that plane, it's not unheard of for other powerful planes to do the same. So, I'm guessing Krona chose you to prepare for a future threat in our plane. Edward pondered briefly. Albion was not exactly correct. Krona chose him because he displayed tremendous talent and luck. In other words, her blessing was nothing but adding wings to a tiger. Furthermore, Edward guessed Krona only chose him after he created the empire. Furthermore, she did not do it completely because of foreign threats but simply because she was tired of the gods and their inadequacy. You seem to have thought of something. Did you notice certain signs? Asked Albion. You don't need to do these things. The dragon grunted at him, but Edward ignored him. I came here to acquire the advanced dragon language from you. Unfortunately, this is the highest secret of the dragon clan, something even the high elves desire. So, I can't reveal them to you. Do you know where this place is? Why are you asking such a strange question? This place is located outside the astral realm, a place where the restrictions of your bloodline source have been drastically reduced. I placed you here to prevent your kind from finding you and discovering the empire. So, even if you pass it to me, there won't be any problem. The dragon contemplated for a moment. I know the high elves' spirit language, which is the source of their high magic. I can exchange it with you. Edward shook his head. If I guess correctly, the advanced dragon language allows your race to resonate with certain authority and use their powers. You're the Dragon King, so you must be very knowledgeable in the Thunder character, allowing you to borrow the power of Thunder Law. My theory is that each of the Dragon Kings knows one advanced dragon character that corresponds to their attribute. Am I correct? You're right, said the dragon, who felt exhausted dealing with someone of such high wisdom. Since you know this truth, you should understand my character won't do you much since you don't have Thunder authority. No, it's even more valuable since it can allow me to control Thunder Law. The Thunder character can only allow resonance with the Thunder authority of the universe. It cannot allow you to control. The dragon stopped as he realized his words made no sense. This man already controlled other authorities, so the Thunder character can be used by him to control a new one. In other words, it was perfect for someone like him. Have you realized the true purpose of the Thunder character? Or any of your dragon advance language, said Edward. They are the best training for people to become lawmagus, as you called it. In the future, when an arcanist reaches the willpower requirement to become legends, they can study whatever characters are needed for whatever authority they wish to control. Edward even plans to create his own character based on his 4 laws of space, time, destruction, and curse to allow other people to learn from them. And once he acquires more laws, he will also create other characters for them. However, now, he wished to get his hands on the dragon's character to learn more laws and how to create these characters. You want to train more lawmagus? Asked Albion. Isn't that obvious? My goal is to create an era even more prosperous than the Magus race. Chapter 490, Guznad Reaction. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Albion looked at the human before him. If it were before, he would think this person had an illusion of grandeur. After all the planes in the astral realm spent their entire existence and history chasing the shadows of the Magus race and never even seeing with close view. Yet, some humans dare to say he would create an era even more glorious than theirs. However, Albion cannot shake off the feeling that he might pull it off. Although this feeling was absurd in all senses of the word, he believed it. So, after pondering for a moment, he said, "Fine, I agree with your terms. However, I still need something in return." "Very well," said Edward with a smile. "I will give you all the resources you need to reach Tier 8. Albion was currently Tier 5, so this offer was satisfactory to him. "This is not enough." "Oh, do you have something in mind?" "I want you to take me to your next voyage," said Albion. "I want to see what is outside the astral realm." Edward considered for a moment. "I agree, but you still cannot return to the astral realm." "That's fine." Edward nodded. As long as the Dragon Temple and other dragon gods could not find Albion's location, everything would be fine. In the early stages, he was extremely weak, so he was more careful than normal. However, now, the Empire was a Tier 10 civilization, albeit a weak one compared to these Tier 10 gods and entities who have dozens of planes of the same level under their control. Regardless, the Arcane Empire still has ways to protect itself. And after the war, they can gather more resources to build a few more Tier 10 floating cities. After making the agreement, Albion did not go back to his words. He linked his soul to Edward, preparing to send the information to his mind. The dragon was nervous since he knew such an act would trigger a negative reaction from his bloodline. And as expected, as soon as he began the transfer, he felt something activated deep in his bloodline and soul. However, the backlash he expected did not come. It was like the bloodline source knew he had committed a taboo but could not find his location. It really works, thought Albion, feeling relieved. Although he believed Edward's words, a part of him was still scared. After all dragons with a pure enough bloodline will have an instinctive fear and respect for the source. After sighing in relief, he continued his transmission. The process took a while as Albion also transferred his understanding of the Thunder Dragon character, allowing Edward to wield as soon as possible. After the process ended, Edward did not back on his words and ordered a golem to bring back the resources Albion needed. One last thing before I leave. How many kings does your clan have, and what is their attribute? The dragon hesitated for a moment before deciding to answer. He realized his relationship with Edward might be the key that ensured the survival of the dragon race in the future, and with his help, the dragon might thrive under the Arcane Empire and reach heights they could only dream about. Let's see, there is water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, darkness, space, time, poison, life, death, and destruction. And before my death, I heard Order and Chaos King might be appearing soon. Each of the Dragon Kings has a character that corresponds to their attribute. So, the Dragon of Origin, the source of your bloodline, should be the one who controls all the characters. How do you know about Father? Father? Is that how you address and view him? Albion remained quiet. Although he decides to trust this human and even has high hopes for the future, there are certain things he cannot immediately let go of. Never mind, said Edward after seeing the dragon's reaction. You suddenly said new kings were being born. Yes, and what is it? Could it be that your clan chose certain individuals to become gods and control certain authority? Then, based on the authority, create a king bloodline and dragon character for the clan. Albion did not answer, but his silence spoke louder than words. If that's true, my opinions of your clans have improved. And what exactly did you think of us? A bunch of overgrown lizards with wings that relied only on their potent bloodline and had no desire for improvement or change. Well, there is also your greed for shiny things and uncontrollable lust. Albion was speechless since the latter was completely correct. Before the rise of the Magus race, their dragon race was exactly like this. However, the Magus race treated them like pets and experimental materials, thus destroying their pride. So, after their departure, their father encouraged them to change, improve, and strive toward a unified goal. You should check your prejudice, said Albion, keeping his face unchanged to hide his embarrassment. Edward gave him a look before leaving. He went to see the Water Dragon King. This one was in a worse situation than Albion since Edward had no foundation of trust with her. As such, she was in a sleeping state, not even tier 2, after so many years. The negotiation with her was fierce, and Edward had to spend a lot of time talking her into it. Finally, she accepted his offer. However, she was not like Albion, privy to certain secrets. She only accepted the deal because she believed she could use this opportunity to contact the bloodline source and tell someone of her situation. Unfortunately, her plan failed. And with Edward's soul contract, he could forcibly take the information from her mind. Finally, Edward returned to Earth, preparing to study the water and thunder characters in an attempt to control these two authorities. His plan is also to study the Death Staff with Bellatrix to gain control of Death Law, Icostar System, Desolate Planet. A lich knelt on the ground before Guznad, who sat on his throne. So, even this plan failed, huh? His tone was calm, but the lich had been with his liege for so long that he recognized the anger and frustration hidden deep inside. The lich knew to remain quiet in such a scenario, so he did not say anything. You seem to have something to say, said Guznad, looking at his attendant, whose body trembled after hearing these words. However, his lips remained tight. Go on with it, and don't make me repeat myself. My lord, I just don't think it was a good idea to ally with an Abyss Lord. Once the gods know of this, there will be no place for you in this plane. Guznad was quiet. He also did not want to use the power of the Abyss. However, the Empire was very sensitive to his power of death. So, for this plan to work, he needed to corrupt one of the Arcanists and could not use his own power. We don't have much time left, and we need to hurry, explained Guznad. As for the Abyss, once I conquer this galaxy and get my hands on what I want, no one will know what I did. The lich opened his mouth and closed it. In his mind, things would never be this simple. However, since the deed had been done, there was no point in dwelling on it. Guznad glanced at his attendant before saying, prepare to move. We don't want the Arcane Empire to react to this next operation. Better yet, we need to prepare to deal them a great blow if they do. As you wish, said the lich before slowly walking out of the room, his head remaining in a low position, walking backward without daring to gaze upon his lord. Chapter 491, The Fall of Verdant. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. 3 months have passed since the entire incident with James and Wentworth. Everything seemed quiet on the surface. Edward focused on acquiring the Thunder, Water, and Death Law while supervising the war. Meanwhile, the war is continuing fiercely. In such a short period, the majority of factions in the galaxy have fallen one way or the other, leaving only the Arcane Empire and Guznad. They fought over territory, population, and resources. However, Guznad's situation has not been ideal, even with the help of the summoned demons from the Abyss. Vita Star System, Planet Verdant. Queen Myrtle, dressed in her elegant white dress, looked intently at a towering tree. Compared to before, the tree had regained some of its vigor. Although it has not returned to its peak, the tree was at most 80% healed. Furthermore, the essence of the tree seemed to have improved. It was as if it was previously made out of normal iron, but now, it was composed of steel. The tree is not the only thing that has changed. Queen Myrtle's surroundings would twist once in a while before returning to normal. Such a phenomenon was the result of her uncontrollable mana. In a short few months, she made rapid progress, swiftly approaching Tier 9. However, as a result of her drastic growth, it was difficult to control her mana. Regardless of this side effect, Queen Myrtle was happy as a smile hung on her face. Her growth was a sign of the noble High Elf's bloodline in her body. As for the lack of mana control, her long lifespan and inherited memories are more than enough to deal with this issue once Guznad's trouble is dealt with. Myrtle was caressing the tree with a beautiful smile that could make the most hardcore man blush. Then, she suddenly stopped, a deep frown plastered on her face. What is this sensation? She found her body trembling slightly as a tremendous fear flashed in her mind. The process was so fast and so short that she momentarily thought she had been mistaken. For the next minute, Myrtle stood in the same position, trying to identify the source of this strange reaction. Then, the sounds of fastly approaching boots interrupted her thought. She took a deep breath to calm down her mind, regaining her regal and noble bearing. Did you find something? She asked without looking back. In the past few months, she sensed some of the elders were acting strangely. At first, she thought they became enthusiastic about studying the High Elf's bloodline, so she did not mind when they requested to retrieve blood samples from every citizen of the kingdom. However, recently, she felt something was wrong, so she began to secretly monitor these elders to see if she could find something wrong. That's not important right now, replied King Arian. A while ago, I suddenly felt a sense of dread looming over me. It was instant before disappearing. Arian saw his wife's movement paused for a moment, so he thought she was annoyed for bringing such an insignificant thing to her presence, so he hurriedly explained. The thing is, it was not only me. All the elders felt the same way, and so far, it appeared that anyone tier 6 and above felt the same thing. Myrtle quickly turned around. Are you telling the truth? There is no point in lying to you. Queen Myrtle only pondered briefly before saying, we must enter the highest alert level. Furthermore, prepare to evacuate the planet. Alas, she did not finish her words when she felt everything turn dark. The sun had receded. The two raised their heads to look at the sky and saw a black and eerie cloud enveloping the entire planet. The power of death, said King Arian with eyes almost popping from his head. His body involuntarily trembled, and he almost fell to the ground. Meanwhile, the queen reacted faster than him. She raised her hand to summon a staff made of silver wood. She slammed the staff on the ground, and countless beautiful writing appeared on the ground, covering the entire planet. Then, a shield appeared to cover the entire planet, pushing the black clouds outside of Verdant's atmosphere. Did you react so quickly? Said a deep and powerful voice that could be heard by every elf on the planet. I tried to prevent your danger senses from activating, but it seems I failed. Worthy of elves with Sun Elves bloodline. Unfortunately, it's useless. Today, your race will be turned into undead, serving me for all eternity. Guznad, said Queen Myrtle with clenched teeth. In the past few months, their kingdom has survived countless encounters and even showed signs of regaining its prosperity. As long as they are given enough time, Myrtle is sure to reach Tier 9 and be on par with Guznad and the Arcane Empire. Then, she can find a way for her people to survive this undead catastrophe. But now, all her senses are telling her only a dim future is awaiting them. Guznad did not say anything else and acted. An enormous black hand with the power of death descended on the planet's defensive system. The shield did not last for 5 seconds before showing signs of destruction. Luckily for the elves, their sacred tree, Validar, began to shine with silver holy lights. Then, with its blessing, the planetary shield was reinforced and blocked the hand. The black hand reacted by pointing one finger and making a hole in the shield. Then, it scattered into a cloud of black energy that prevented the tier from closing. And upon closer observation, the cloud is trying to open the size of the tier while the shield tries to close itself. From that tier, Guznad's troops swarmed in. Countless ships that looked like ordinary sailing boats traveled into space and entered the planet. There were so many of them that it covered the sky in a few seconds. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 pillars of lights flashed corners of the planet Verdant, annihilating all the ships along with the undead on its path. After the first wave of attack, only 5 people remained floating above the sky, and they were all Tier 8 undead. Light magic? Since when did the elves have such technology? Asked one of the Tier 8 ghosts. Did they buy them from the Arcane Empire? No, in the past few months, we suffered many defeats at their hands. Headquarters believed there was a new alliance between them and the Arcane Empire, hence why they acquired so much purification magic technology. But now, it appears this was the elf's development, replied a Tier 8 vampire. So, these elves not only have the Sun Elves bloodline, but some people awakened it. Most likely. That makes things a little tricky. The Sun Elves were known for their fire and light magic or any positive magic. No, it doesn't change anything. We only need to increase the sacrifice so we can fulfill the Lord's plan, replied a zombie wearing black armor. So, we send the Abyss Demons. Yes. Isn't that why we contracted them? After making a plan, the 5 acted swiftly. The next group of people who entered the tier were not undead but a group of Abyss Demons. These abominable creatures rushed into the planet. They instantly covered the sky as there were billions of them. They looked disgusting, creepy, and scary, and the majority smelled of sulfur, rotten and festered corpses, and blood. The elves quickly activated the planetary defense system they installed a few months ago. As these demons, they encountered a layer of protection. In the first layer, they encountered a small barrier world composed of a powerful purification enchantment. So, the majority of these demons were instantly purified of their filth and sin, leaving nothing but their ashes. But they did not care. The abyss demons used countless spells and methods to block the purification process before reaching the second layer of defense. This layer contained a magical flame that imitated the sun. So, millions of demons were instantly burned to death. And since this flame also had some purification power, more of them died. However, these creatures were bred to know no fear, including the fundamental fear of death from all living creatures. They bypassed that layer to reach the third level. In that layer, many small creatures, often known as spirit elves, were chanting a beautiful sound. After hearing it, the demons turned on themselves and began killing each other. And so, millions more die. But, based on their bloodline instinct, they must execute an order given to them. So, they still bypassed that layer after sacrificing millions of their kind. It's time, said the zombie general, looking in the distance. Chapter 492, The Fall of Verdant 2. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. The 5 Tier 8 undead acted swiftly, casting powerful defensive spells. As such, countless black shields appeared around them. Then, as soon as they finished, the 3 pillars of light hit them again. The power of the pillar was devastating. Although these 5 did the best, light magic was the nemesis of the undead. And since the attack was more concentrated this time, 2 undead were severely injured. Luckily, as undead, they do not feel fear or pain. So, such an injury was insignificant to them. Let's proceed, commanded the zombie general. The 5 raised their hands simultaneously to conjure black lights. Tier 8 spell, the Abyss Domain. The sky above planet Verdant suddenly changed. No, it was not just the sky but the entire planet. A weird aura that originated from the body of the fallen demons suddenly corroded the whole planet. The aura was eerie, disgusting, evil, and corrosive. Every fauna on this luscious green planet turned black, red, or purple. They turned from beautiful things that gave life to ugly species that resonated with despair and evil. And the plants and flowers were not the only creatures or things affected. Every rock, dirt, water, and even the air became corrupted. The mana that existed in the surrounding turned into dark mana, and the ley lines who were the source of the mana were also affected. The animals mutated and became savage while also gaining more powerful spells and abilities. The elves infected by this aura immediately die, but a few survive. But the result was something worse than death. Their bloodline, body, mana, and soul were also corrupted, turning into abyssal demons. The Validar tree acted swiftly, releasing another holy light to purify this aura. However, this was a vain attempt. So, under the control of the queen, the tree delegated its power to protect a few of the central cities of the planet. Unfortunately, the places not protected became hell on earth. The entire planet formed a strange dichotomy. The places protected had a shield around them, and when observed from above, were these places where one would expect the gods to live. Meanwhile, outside the domes, it was hell that the devil and his minions inhabited. Clemner, the capital of the kingdom. Queen Myrtle floated above the city, her body trembling. Blood dripped from the corner of her mouth as a result of pushing her soul and mana beyond her limit. Soon, blood began to drip from her eyes, and that was the result of her immense grief. Soon afterward, 8 people, including King Arian, flew to her side. "Are you all right?" he asked but received no answer. As husband and wife, they were connected through their souls so he could feel the pain and grief she was currently dealing with. But he also knew that it was not the time to deal with such emotions. "We need to act immediately," said one of the elders. "In this situation, what can we do? Guznad has most likely sent in one of his clones. Or maybe, even showed up in person." The elders knew the vast difference between Tier 8 and 9. So, although they had great faith in their queen to one day rival and surpass Guznad, now was not the time. Since the start of the war, only one group was able to deal with one of Guznad's clones, the Arcane Empire. "We need to ask the Arcane Empire for help." "Is this truly the only way?" asked a male elder. The man looked in his mid-30s, but he had an ancient aura about him, and his eyes indicated wisdom and vicissitude. "Look at the sky, we have no other choice." The planetary shield was no longer working because the queen and the tree had to focus their defensive capabilities on the few remaining cities of the kingdom. As such, more demons and undead rushed into the planet, not hiding their intention to corrupt and turn all living things into one of their own. "Will they help us, is the best question," commented a female elder who looked like an elderly. However, oddly, she remained beautiful and charming despite her elderly appearance. "The Arcane Emperor is obsessed with creating an empire where all races are equal and live in harmony. So, as long as we ask, he will send aid. Of course, because of our previous rejections, we will suffer immensely during the negotiations." The elders stopped talking and looked at Queen Myrtle. Although they agreed with this decision, the final choice was in the hands of their queen. If she chose to find her last breath, they would not hesitate to follow her in death. Queen Myrtle felt the gaze of the people behind. She was quiet for a brief period, looking at the current state of planet Verdant. She has spent countless millennia in this place, watching change for the better under her reign. She remembered the envy and desire other races and factions would have after visiting this planet, their sincere praise about the beauty of the kingdom and this planet. And now, everything is ruined. So, Queen Myrtle hated the undead, the abyss demons, and Guznad. More importantly, she hated herself. Her arrogance is what brought her people to such a state. She raised her hand to wipe the blood tears. "I will make the call." She used her staff to cast a long-range communication spell. Unfortunately, there was no response. So, she tried a few more times with no response. "Do you think the Emperor refused to accept us?" said an elder with an ugly expression. "Not necessarily. Guznad will not allow us to call for reinforcement. So, he might block all attempts to call for aid. So, what should we do? If they cannot call for help, their planet and race will be doomed." "We can use the sacred tree," said the truly elderly elder. "How so?" asked the others, who knew she was the oldest amongst them, thus the wisest and most knowledgeable. In ancient times, the High Elves used the sacred tree to communicate across the universe and across planes through a very intricate system and secret system. "We can use it to communicate to all the trees in the Empire, sending them a message of our current plight." "Is that so?" muttered another elder. "Why didn't you say so?" The elder stopped as he answered his own question. Before then, there was no one who awakened the Sun Elf bloodline, so this method could not be used. The sacred tree is not at its peak, so using such a method could easily injure it. But now, there is no time to hesitate. Queen Myrtle did not waste time and immediately acted. She closed her eyes and connected to Validar. Using her bloodline as a key, she saw this intricate system that resembled tree roots. There were so many that she was dizzy, taking a moment to get the hang of properly controlling this system. Then, she focused on the different regions of this system. In her mind, the Queen saw countless trees scattered across the entire galaxy. She discovered a great majority was infected by death energy, and a significant was corrupted and could not be accessed. She focused on the direction of the Arcane Empire's territory, accessing most of the trees. Without hesitation, the Queen sent her SOS call, hoping to save her people. Then, she exhaled deeply as she opened her eyes. "Now, all I have to do is resist until reinforcement arrives." She had a look of determination. She was prepared to do whatever it took to ensure her race's survival, even if she had to sacrifice herself. Chapter 493, The Fall of Verdant, 3. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. 15 minutes passed by, and for these elves with long lifespans, they can say for sure that these were the longest 15 minutes of their lives. The Queen had to focus on reinforcing the city's barriers using her power and the sacred tree. Meanwhile, the elders would also take time to transfer their mana to her to alleviate the situation. However, after the 15-minute mark, the complexion of everyone was hard to look at. 15 minutes was more than enough time for the Arcane Empire to receive the message and deploy a rescue fleet. Such a conclusion was not without basis. During the past years of this war, there have been too many messages in the universe's web of planets and people who talked about how fast the Arcane Empire came to rescue them after surrendering and asking for aid. The fastest record was 3 minutes and 23 seconds. The Arcane Empire has built a marketing campaign about how fast they are to respond to come to their allies' aid. And the oldest recorded time was 11 minutes and 18 seconds. But now, 15 minutes had passed, and nothing happened. "Maybe, something is holding them off," commented King Abion, who wished to remain positive. The elders nodded, but anyone with a keen observation could see the luster in their eyes dimmed greatly. Another 5 minutes passed, and the shield was holding on with the great effort of the Queen. "Something is wrong," said the wisest elder, her old eyes looking at the sky full of the brilliance of intelligence. "Isn't that obvious?" "No, I'm talking about this attack. Why can we last so long? I don't mean to underestimate the Queen and the sacred tree, but the undead should have broken through our defenses long ago." Her words made everyone quiet. "Now that you mention it, it's odd that Guznad did not personally take action. With his strength, it would be a miracle if we lasted more than 5 minutes." These elders immediately began to analyze this anomaly. "Could it be that Guznad only sent a clone to scare us? He only showed up before leaving?" asked one of the elders, his words full of hope. "Alas, no, I can sense his presence outside of the planet," added the Queen, and the feeling of hope was once again extinguished. "We are nothing but bait," said the wise elder, her expression extremely calm for such a situation. "You mean?" "Yes. Guznad attacked us to lure the Arcane Empire. His plan was probably to ambush them and deal a severe blow to their force." The elders had a sudden look of realization. "This may be good news for us," commented King Arion, who refused to give up. "What do you mean?" "We know the Arcane Empire has a great intelligence-gathering agency and a divination department. Maybe, they learned of Guznad's plan beforehand and are waiting for the perfect time to counterattack. So, maybe, if we wait and survive long enough, they will appear at the last minute to deal a blow to Guznad." Such a thing was possible. However, for such a plan to succeed, the Arcane Empire would have to wait until the final moment, when Guznad believed they would not show up, to appear. And by then, their people might reach the brink of extermination. Of course, all this assumption is based on the fact the Empire did not abandon them after the recent events. "This is our only chance, so we must persevere," said Queen Myrtle, her spirit sublimated to the highest peak. 40 minutes after she sent the distress signal, the shields remained. However, someone was impatient. A black scythe descended from out of space and landed on the planet. The scythe's landing spot was one of the cities the Queen protected. However, her shield was nothing to that psyche as it penetrated smoother than a hot knife cut butter. Then, it released a terrifying black gas that killed every elf in that city. Then, it made them undead of different qualities, tiers, and varieties. The process was fast, leaving no room for reaction or negotiation. The worst part was this was just the beginning. The black gas released by the divine weapon began to expand at an alarming rate. and whenever it encountered a protected city, it would only take a few seconds before breaking them and doing the same. The process lasted until one place remained, Clemner. Queen Myrtle resisted. Her body shrunk until she was almost a mummy, her hair turned all white, and wrinkles appeared all over her face. However, her aura drastically increased, along with her mana. The shield that was about to be destroyed was reinforced, buying her kind a few more seconds of survival. Then, the king and elders followed the same fate as her, sacrificing their lives to keep powering the protective shield. Validar, the sacred tree, withered in a matter of a few seconds. Suddenly, the elves in Clemner felt an intense sadness overwhelm their mind. It was like someone close to them had passed away, like their own mother had shed her mortal coil. So, all the elves in the remaining city began to shed tears, knowing that their sacred tree was no more. Furthermore, they also knew their race was on the precipice of being destroyed. The older elves with tier 6 flew into the sky, trying to follow the path of their elders. Queen Myrtle wanted to open her mouth and refuse their help. Unfortunately, she knew this was the only way to buy enough time for their race. Furthermore, she was currently too weak to even speak. After sacrificing themselves, these elves brought more time for their people. Sadly, it was only a few more seconds. So, the young man and woman who reached tier 6 followed their predecessors. A chain reaction occurred after the first batch. After the young tier 6 died, the tier 5 elves flew and followed the same fate. They repeated the process until the children were just born. As a blessed species, all their members were born with mana. However, this young one did not even have enough mana to be classified as tier 1. They could not fly nor use such a technique as sacrificing their lives. Queen Myrtle was now the only fighting prowess of this once mighty kingdom that ruled over the Milky Way galaxy. She glanced at the few hundred remaining of her kind. If her body could, she would cry tears of blood for a second time. Alas, she was now only hanging by sheer determination and obsession. Queen Myrtle raised her head to look at the sky, mustering all the remaining strength she had left. Arcane Emperor, if you are watching this, please help my people. I am willing to do anything. A wind blew from the void, but nothing appeared. So, the lights in her eyes finally dimmed. With her spirit broken, her body could no longer remain. So, Queen Myrtle began to rapidly disintegrate into particles as small as sands. I have doomed my people, thought Queen Myrtle. Then, a look of unwillingness appeared on her face. So, before entering absolute darkness, she cast one last spell. A white space that seemed infinite. Edward suddenly appeared in this place. Huh? Someone can forcibly summon my spirit. He looked around while on guard. Where is this? He soon saw someone opposite him and immediately recognized who it was. Queen Myrtle? You're responsible for this. Why? Why did you not save my people? She asked, almost roaring. Edward did not answer her but continued analyzing the situation and environment. This place is familiar. And the power used to summon, it's not the first time I've experienced. His mind worked extremely fast. Krona, that's her power. Answer me, roared the queen, and Edward finally paid attention to her. You were watching our downfall, were you not? I was. Then, how can you be so cruel? Why not save my people? The despair in her voice made the surrounding space tremble. Is it because of the way I acted during our meeting? I know I was wrong, but is such an act enough to allow an entire race to perish? I thought you were more open-minded than this. I am, replied Edward calmly. Liar. Then why are my people gone? Technically speaking, they are not. What do you mean? I have acquired the bloodline sample of 80% of your population, so in the future, they will be revived as clones and citizens of the Empire. I see, muttered Queen Myrtle. You decided that it was not worth including our people in the Empire because of our arrogance and already established worldviews. So, you chose to clone us, recreating new elves with blank slates that are more easily brainwashed and incorporated into the Empire. Exactly. Myrtle did not know how to feel about all this. In some ways, her race did not become extinct. But, they also cannot be called her race since they will now have a different view, culture, and even customs. Wasn't there a better solution? One where such extreme methods were used. One where you can live and still be the queen, asked Edward with a sneer. Myrtle did not answer. Even if I was not the queen. After our conversation, I already determined your people were incapable of integrating into the Empire. Your culture, custom, and heritage are too ancient and noble, making them ingrained into your soul and blood. After joining the Empire, your people would only use our knowledge and resources to thrive and return to the time of your ancestors, the Sun Elves. Then, you would try to either leave and regain your sovereignty or try to overthrow the Empire and return to the top. Whatever choice you made, you would have become an unstable factor. And I don't want to deal with all that nonsense. Myrtle was quiet as he knew the Emperor was correct. If her people were forcibly incorporated into the Empire, there was a high probability they would follow the course he described. Myrtle exhaled deeply. Maybe, this is for the best, she muttered before finally dissipating for good. Wait, yelled Edward. You haven't told me how you summoned me here. Allow me to explain, said another voice. Chapter 494, Conversation and Disappointment. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Edward looked over and recognized the petite figure that appeared before him. He immediately smiled as he said, Mother Krona, it's always a pleasure to see you. Krona paused, not expecting such a reaction. This nigh omnipotent creature would be shocked if she was capable of such a thing. Although I know you're only saying these words without meaning them, I'm still happy, she replied with a lovely smile. I meant every word, said Edward. The future in the Empire will go smoother with Crony on their side. So, there is no downside to pleasing her. Furthermore, she is considered the mother of all sentient creatures in the cosmic faith plane, so it's nothing to call her that. Crona calmly nodded. Upon learning of her existence, most creatures will react in two main ways, worship her as their mother or become revolted by the idea they have a creator. So, she was used to being called mother along with many vile names. You said you knew why she could summon me here, asked Edward. Yes. The High Elves had a contract with me long ago when they ruled over the universe, allowing them to borrow my power. Over the years, the contract has pretty much been annulled. However, there is still a connection in their bloodline. So, over the years, they have used that connection to curse their enemy. Edward immediately frowned after hearing that. That sounds like a dangerous ability to have. Not really. The curse can only be directed to the person who killed them. Furthermore, not every High Elves have this ability, their bloodline and knowledge must reach a certain standard. I see. So, Queen Myrtle used her Sun Elf bloodline and the connection with you to summon me and fulfill her last obsession before death. Correct, nodded Crona. I was surprised by her actions. No High Elf has been able to use my power to such a degree. How long, exactly, he asked. 12 million years, to be specific. Really, muttered Edward with a frown. He did not think Queen Myrtle was special. The reason for such power was most likely due to her soul, mind, and spirit sublimated to an unprecedented level before her final moment. And with such an increase, her ability to control her magical abilities reached a new height. Of course, he also gave her credit. If not for her love for people and unwillingness to give up at the very last moment, she would have never succeeded. However, his focus was not on Queen Myrtle but on the fact that no High Elf could use their bloodline to such a level. Crona suddenly sighed, showing emotions of anger, disappointment, and helplessness. For a moment, Edward could not tell she was a powerful consciousness that worked purely on logic and did not have any emotions. Now, do you see why I'm so invested in your success, said Crona, having guessed Edward's mind. Now only have the gods been disappointing, but even the other powerful races have been on a downward spiral. The only ones with some prospects are these greedy and lustful dragons. However, even after blessing them with luck and prosperity for millions of years, their progress has been subpar at best. Crona looked in the distance, somewhat distracted. There is not enough time left. And this place needs drastic change. She previously believed that maybe she should take things slowly, correcting the issues of the current faith god's civilization. However, after many failed attempts, she realized she needed to overthrow the board and start over. Otherwise, her fate will be to be swallowed by other planes. I'm glad you chose us. I promise you won't regret it. I know I won't, replied Crona with a smile. If not for the rules, I would have granted you much more help. Rules. I've said too much, she replied calmly. I'm sure you have plenty of work to do. Let's not waste time. Indeed. Once again, the pleasure was all mine. Edward opened his eyes and was in his lab, taking a break and drinking tea with a screen before him. He checked the temperature and discovered not even a second had passed. He took a sip while contemplating his experience. In that short conversation, he learned a great deal of things, some of which could affect the fate of the entire empire. So, he needed to analyze and store them in his mind to help him make future decisions. He finished his drinks before summoning someone. A few seconds later, a shadow manifested before him, half kneeling on the floor. You did a great job for your first mission, praised Edward. Thank you, Your Majesty, replied Itaki. Do you think what I did was cruel? Yes, replied the shadow ninja without hesitation. No hesitation, calmly said Edward. It's indeed cruel. However, in this world, cruelty has become the norm. Itaki thought he had seen the cruelty and darkness of the world. However, in the short few months since arriving in this place, he truly understood what true cruelty was. In his home world, war only affects a few villages, and if lucky, the entire continent. However, even in times of war, civilian casualties are usually kept to a certain level while mostly ninjas suffer. However, in this place, entire planets are usually the casualties in small-scale confrontations. So, he understood that people need to be cruel to survive in this environment. And if they want to achieve grand causes like the Emperor, cruelty has become a tool for them. Well, it seems you're adapting quite well, said Edward. I tried my best. Keep up the good work, but don't be too complacent after one mission. The climax of this war is about to begin, and I have a feeling things will not go smoothly. Edward dismissed Itaki and prepared to continue his study of the advanced dragon language. However, he soon received another call. Another emergency? What is it this time? Planet Verdant. Guznad stood in a ship outside of the planet's space. Many people thought he only sent a clone, but only a few people knew that his main body arrived. He watched Queen Myrtle's last stand and the fall of the Elf Kingdom. So, he did not take the bait? It's not like him, commented Guznad. Did someone leak our plan? It's very unlikely, replied the Lich servant. Even if our plan were revealed, the Arcane Emperor would never pass the chance to incorporate the elves into his empire, continued Guznad. Could it be because of the strange elves that suddenly appeared on the new continent? He knew a new continent was added to the Empire's home world, Earth. So, he theorized maybe the Arcane Empire was satisfied with these elves and abandoned this one. I'm afraid it might be something else. Oh, did you find something? A few of the new companions were members of the Elf Council. We recovered some deleted memories where someone forced them to vote for a project that would gather the blood of most of the population. This information was not easy to get as the mysterious shadows did an excellent job of ensuring no one discovered the tempered memories. However, they were not good enough, so they could retrieve some memories. Blood? I see. He took their blood so he could clone them. Now that he had what he wanted, he had no problem discarding these people. Guznad understood the thinking behind such an act. Integrating such a bunch of unruly elves into the Empire would cause trouble, so he found another way to do it through cloning technology. Lord, what should we do now? They spent so much time, effort, and resources on this plan. And now, it was totally useless. We will use Plan B, replied Guznad. And that is, force him into this quagmire. Chapter 495, also your problem. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. An undead ship approached the border of the Empire's territory. As soon as it appeared, it was almost blown to smithereens. Luckily, Dumbledore was posted on that location and recognized the ship was hosting the flag that indicated they came on a diplomatic mission. Dumbledore, still wearing a mask, approached the ship surrounded by soldiers and ready to attack with the slightest signs that something might go wrong. However, he soon discovered that his cautions might have been overboard. Standing before him was a skeleton that was barely tier 2. He guessed this soldier was chosen as the emissary on the likely chance the Empire immediately attacked and obliterated him. So, losing such a low-level soldier was nothing to Guznad's legion. State your purpose, said Dumbledore, choosing a more direct approach. Our Lord wants to speak to your Emperor, said the skeleton soldier before handing a black orb. However, his actions immediately made the room more tense as the soldiers became on guard. And even Dumbledore entered a state of high alert. The only person calm throughout the entire interaction was the skeleton. His orders were to bring this thing to the people of the Arcane Empire before returning to his squadron. He did not care for anything else, even the possibility of death. For undead, death is the ultimate joy since they get to enter the Lord's divine kingdom and live a third life. Dumbledore looked at the black orb and did not immediately take it. Instead, he used dozens of spells to detect what it was. A communication medium. He discovered that this thing would allow the Emperor to communicate with someone on the undead side, most likely Guznad himself. However, regardless of his discovery, he decided to still remain cautious. So, he took a case with sealing properties, often used to preserve certain rare magical herbs, and placed the orb inside. Dumbledore proceeded to add a few more layers of sealing magic on the case. Then, after the skeleton departed, he left the orb on a ship outside of the Empire's territory. He did not want to risk bringing this unknown and foreign object into the Empire. He contacted Edwards and the others to tell them of the situation. So, a team of personnel soon arrived to test the black orb and ensure there was no problem. Finally, Edward used it as a medium to contact Guznad. The death god sat on a throne of bones, dressed in all black, with a large mirror floating before him. Meanwhile, Edward sat on a gold and white throne with beautiful symbols carved on them. He wore his usual white archmage robe and looked as elegant and noble as ever. Guznad, I believe this is our second meeting. I hope this one is not as unpleasant as the first one. Why would you have such hope? Do you think I'm contacting you to surrender or call for peace? Well, a man can dream. Then, continue dreaming, said Guznad nonchalantly, making Edward chuckle. So, to what do I owe this pleasure? You need to begin pulling your weight. Pardon me. Edward did not hide his confusion. For a moment, he wondered whether Guznad had absorbed too much faith and his mind was affected, driving him to a state of madness. However, the ruler of death was perfectly sane, and he did not care for the Emperor's words if he knew what the latter was thinking. So, he directly explained what his words meant. I'm reaching my limit on isolating this galaxy from the outside. So, it's time for you to contribute. Edward's demeanor suddenly changed, becoming sharp and fierce. He squinted his eyes. Are you threatening me? I am, replied Guznad. If those gods enter the galaxy, one of the first things they will do is annihilate your empire. In fact, I'm willing to bet you're the first on their elimination list, even above me. The very existence of the Arcane Empire is a threat to these gods. The fact their society is based on knowledge, their disregard for theology, their development of technology in tandem with magic, and the fact their people contained Magus bloodline, all these are reasons the gods will not tolerate them. Then, if you add all the other secrets the Empire is hiding, the gods have already considered the Arcane Empire a big fat sheep that they need to dismember and distribute amongst themselves. With this analysis, Guznad decided to drag the Arcane Emperor into this quagmire, forcing him to alleviate his situation. If I remember correctly, you use a unique magic artifact from the Magus race to isolate the galaxy, asked Edward, and Guznad squinted his eyes after hearing this question. Such a thing was supposed to be secret. Many people believed he used his own power and his divine kingdom to isolate the galaxy. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he realized it was not that surprising that such a secret was leaked. After all, the Arcane Empire knew better. They knew he did not have the power alone to achieve such a feat. You're correct, replied Guznad. Very well. Give me 2 hours, and I will send you a solution. Edward did not wait for his response and ended the conversation. That damn bastard, he has no respect and cursed the lich servant. It's fine, said Guznad, not minding such a minor thing. So, he waited for the decided time. Then, he received news that the Arcane Empire sent a vessel near the border of their territory, controlled by a low-level golem. Guzand waved his hand, and the item sent by Edward appeared in his palm. "My lord," said the Lich. "No need for concern," said Guznad as he opened the box to see what was inside. He saw a gem the size of a tennis ball. "Such intense and pure mana," he commented. Although the intensity of the mana was only tier 9, the purity was unlike anything he had ever seen in his long life. "With this energy, I can now last for a few months without any restrictions." His main body will be able to move without having to spend all his energy and effort on controlling the disc. "So, you could benefit by absorbing it," suggested the Lich. "Such pure mana would benefit even a god." "I had the same idea, but it seems this thing contains something dangerous," replied Guznad, who knew the Emperor tempered with this thing to prevent him from swallowing. "It's a shame," nodded the Lich. "Anyway, we now have some leverage and can continue blackmailing the Arcane Emperor. As long as we use this tactic to our advantage, we can benefit immensely in this war." "You underestimate him. I reckon we can probably use this tactic 3 to 5 times before he finds a solution to this problem," replied Guznad. After theorizing the Arcane Emperor was responsible for isolating the universe web from the outside world, he knew this man could not be measured by normal standards. And after his recent 2 failures, he knew he had the right idea about his enemy. So, he did not think his tactic would last long. "The Arcane Emperor, you're a formidable opponent. However, you have one fatal weakness: you're too young. This universe is old and contains too many secrets. Secrets that your young age is not privy to." Guznad sneered as he prepared his next attack. "And this time, he will learn from his previous mistakes and ensure success. Let's go. The war is about to reach its climax, and there are many things to prepare for. We cannot afford any more failures." Guznad took his legion and left. They have acquired many new undead with great potential. Although he felt it was a shame he could not turn the elders and the queen with noble bloodline into his rank, he was still satisfied with the final outcome. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard Chapter 496, Shortcut. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Edward sat on his throne, not happy with how the situation turned out. Furthermore, he knew this would not be a one-time thing, so he did not want to be blackmailed again. "I need to finish the fog," muttered Edward. One of his projects was to create a fog that would surround the Milky Way galaxy and take the place of Guznad's artifact. That way, after the war ended and Guznad could no longer protect this place, the Empire would not have to experience the invasion from the gods. "Morgana, show me the data," said Edward, and the little elf knew what he was talking about. The Empire sent people to study and gather data on the shield that Guznad placed on the Milky Way. Based on the information gathered, Edward was very interested in the Magus magic artifact that created that protection. So, he planned to get it from Guznad's dead corpse. "How is the fog going?" he asked while reviewing the data. "It's basically done," replied Morgana. "We've even improved it based on the data you just asked for." The original design of the fog was based on a protective measure Edward discovered around the Black Clover universe, so it was unique and powerful when it came to protecting a large area. "I'm sensing a but," asked Edward. "The problem with the project is the energy core powering the fog," continued Morgana as she summoned a holographic screen to show him. "We would need a tier 10 ether core to ensure the fog that can protect the galaxy. However, one core cannot provide enough energy to block so many gods. Furthermore, we only have one tier 10 ether core in Netheril. So, if we used it, it would become useless since all its power would be dedicated to powering the fog." Edward frowned. The intensity of a core is important, but the application of the energy is also very important. For example, a tier 10 core cloud powered an entire universe. However, if the application of energy is enough, the same core could power a universe and a half. Or even more exaggerated, 2 or more universes. The energy application of Guznad's magical artifact must reach another level. The energy that Guznad can provide the artifact is only tier 9. Yet, he can still block more than 3 tier 10 gods. So, Edward knew creating such an artifact was currently beyond his capabilities, so he wanted to get his hands on it. "Any solution to our problem?" asked Edward. "We can turn Netheril's ether core into super solid, so it should temporarily solve our problem. However, the core issue is to create more tier 10 cores. So, we must begin our invasion of the dark multiverse as soon as possible." "Yes. Then, send our golem legions. Ask them to target the timelines without the Empire, then begin mining resources and energy." Edward feared that one of his variants would defeat the golem legions and studied them, thus allowing their timeline to develop faster than normal. "Then, what are you going to do?" "I'll continue my research on the mana grid," said Edward. "If we can find a timeline where the mana grid is not under the control of the gods, we would have access to unlimited energy." The mana grid rushed through the entire universe and contained unimaginable energy. If the Empire could control it, Edward won't have to worry about energy for a long time. "Do we have a few of the seer golems available?" "There are only 2 still available," replied Morgana. "The amount of golems with divination capabilities is very small in the Empire because only a few people can create them, Edward not included. Create a team with them at the center and send them to search for such a timeline. Ask Luna to focus on this project after the war ends." With the current situation, Edward could not mobilize too many divination masters or seers. However, this project was top of the line regarding importance. Otherwise, he would have asked Luna to leave immediately. Well, let's get started, muttered Edward before beginning his work. He first created a clone that was in charge of turning Netheral's ether core into super solid. Then, under his order, many departments began working like a well-functioned machine, deploying the golems he requested. Finally, his main body began to work on the monogrid. He was confident in his research because he had already acquired a great deal of knowledge about the grid from the Akashic records. So, in a month, he developed an initial enchantment to draw energy from the grid. However, despite blocking the grid from the outside, he received obstruction in the process of drawing mana. So, he needed to deal with this issue before considering his plan's success. Did the Magus race leave some sort of will or consciousness on the monogrid? Is this why I have received obstruction? Or did the gods still have certain control over the thing? While deep in thought, he received 2 calls, both important. 2 beautiful faces appeared when the screen appeared before him, making him smile. The love of my life, he said. And who are you talking about? Asked Hermione. Of course, it's both of you. Olivier ignored his sweet talk while Hermione rolled her eyes. So, how was the abyss? Dark, eerie, creepy, and full of negative emotions. I'm guessing it's not the best place for a vacation. Far from it, Hermione shook his head. Did you gain anything noteworthy? A few, actually, said Hermione. The first one is that I collected and dissected countless abyss creatures. The bloodline of these creatures is actually very fascinating. How so? They can use anything to evolve. Mana, divine energy, negative emotions, matter, souls, and anything you could think of. And based on what they used, they usually developed into different demons. Interestingly, their evolutions will always be toward the evil side. That is indeed interesting. Such a malleable bloodline is unlike anything the Empire has seen or discovered. The souls of these creatures are the filthiest thing I've ever seen in my life. It made me fascinated, and I wanted to study them, she continued. What's stopping you? It's not my field, and I have my own research to focus on. True. So, anything else? There are many. The Abyss has turned into a commerce hub where countless planes come to exchange because of how many planes they are connected to. So, the magical resources are abundant. However, I have noticed these people seemed very antagonistic to people from our plane. If not for the warnings you sent me, I might have been discovered. After the events with the Beastmaster plane, Edward sensed other planes might not be too friendly to the Cosmic Faith plane, so he warned Hermione to be careful. I had 2 major discoveries during my time there, continued Hermione. The first one is I learned the Devil Soul language, and it's complete. The Devil Soul language is a unique magical language that is excellent at influencing the soul or even when using any soul or spiritual magic. Edward received a copy when he was traveling the world after graduating from Hogwarts. However, it was not complete. As such, even though he deduced the rest and incorporated it into his arcane rune language, he still wanted the complete language. That's excellent news, he said. He once theorized that he might be able to understand soul rule from the language. What's the second? I have found a shortcut to understanding authority. Are you serious? Yes. The Abyss Lords are blessed by the Abyss will, allowing them to control certain authority. After refining the Abyss imprint and becoming a Lord, I discovered I can take my time to study these authorities instead of only using them. That's great news. Now, we only need to solve the issue of willpower. Chapter 497, The situation is settled. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. Christiu has made some improvements in creating a method to increase willpower. However, his research time was too short, and he had not accomplished significant results yet. Luckily, he is determined, so he accelerated his school time, learning years of curriculum in a short few months. Give him a little more time, Chris will be on PAR with a graduate from Bones Advanced School Magic. With the royal family's support, he can swiftly become a Tier 7 Arcanist and finish his research. Once that research is successful, the Empire can use the Abyss imprint and the Advanced Dragon language and the use of intent studied by the reincarnator named Bai to cultivate more legendary Arcanists. If there are people looking for us in other planes, we must take precautions when we send people to use the Abyss imprint, commented Olivier. It will be a problem if many Arcanists from our Empire become Abyss Lords in an attempt to study authority, nodded Hermione. With so many people becoming Lords, it would be a surprise if they were not detected. Is it possible for you to let them borrow the power of the imprint? Asked Edward. It is possible, replied Hermione, thinking such a method was possible. Abyss Lords would never allow anyone, including their closest subordinates, to borrow their imprint. Things like betrayal are too common among demons. It can be argued these demons do not have the word loyalty in their vocabulary. They followed their lords only because they were weak, in other words, out of fear. So, if an Abyss Lord allowed his subordinate to borrow his imprint, which is the symbol of his status and source of strength, he would 100% be betrayed and lose that position. However, Hermione does not have the issue. She does not care too much about the status of Abyss Lord and would not care if someone betrayed her. Furthermore, Edward has already brainwashed these Arcanists to despise foreign powers like faith that the gods rely on or this Abyss imprint that the demons used. So, even if they gave these Arcanists the imprint, 95% of them would only think of it as a foreign power. They would most likely try to study and replicate its power. Or, even worse, try to steal the power of the Abyss for their permanent use. The only issue with this plan is the Soul Flame Shield, continued Hermione. It might alert the Abyss will. So, did it try to do something sneaky? Asked Edward. Yes. While refining the imprint, it tried to leave a secret imprint on my soul flame. Luckily, you provide me with the protection, otherwise, I would not be the wisest. Edward nodded. He was always skeptical of any planar will, let alone one with such a terrible reputation as the Abyss will. So, he did not let Hermione refine the imprint without any protection. Can we try to deceive it? Asked Olivier. If many arcanists borrowed the imprint and the Abyss will detect so many people who succeeded in preventing its action of branding their soul flames, it might alert it. So, the best option would be to deceive the will. Deceiving the planar will is one of the highest technologies we are trying to develop for future planar deployment and conquest. As of now, we are so far from that level. The Magus should have this technology. Do you want to search for it? How likely do you think we would find something like that? Replied Edward. Honestly, I don't want us to have too much connection with them. For such a civilization that has transcended cause and effect, having too much connection with them might not be a good idea. I can't tell if you're being too paranoid or something else. Anyway, it's always good to be cautious, said Olivier. But this issue will be difficult to deal with. There is no need to hurry. We have plenty of time before we enter the age of legendary arcanist. By then, we might have a solution, or the situation might not be as bad as we anticipated. Fine, said Olivier before archiving today's discussion. Many things from the Empire must be planned years ahead to prevent possible failure, danger, and backlash or ensure the Empire can develop at a faster speed. You came to see. Is there something? Asked Edward. Two things, said Olivier. The first is that the war has become a two-party battle between us and Guznad. All other factions in the galaxy are either now turned into undead or integrated into the Empire. Although a few people are hiding between the cracks, they are irrelevant to the general situation. So, the plan is proceeding smoothly. Yes. As long as we defeat Guznad and turn all the undead we can back to their former selves, we will be the rightful ruler of the Milky Way galaxy. With our reputation, even if there are some people who call for their independence afterward, they will not pose much of a threat. That's excellent news. What about the integration of the undead? Not all the undead can be reverted, so the rest must be integrated into the Empire. Wiz has been doing a good job. According to recent polls, people's fear and acceptance of undead has drastically increased in the past few months, especially at the center of our territory. Edward was not surprised. The people on Earth and the surrounding star systems were not affected by the war and can only see how intense it was through videos on Skynet and the universe web. So, their acceptance of the undead is not on par with the other territories who had to watch their entire lives, races, and civilizations being annihilated by undead. Do you want to immediately get rid of Guznad? Asked Edward. No, it's not time yet, replied Olivier. The final victory cannot be too easy and swift, otherwise, people will not appreciate the end of the war. And certain people might become suspicious of why we did not eradicate him if we had the means. Furthermore, the outskirts of our territory has just been acquired and needs more time to fully integrate. Looming the war over them is a good way to control them. I'm glad you're taking your time. Is there a problem? The Tier 10 ether core for the fog is not finished yet. We can't eliminate Guznad until it's deployed. Otherwise, I don't want him to do something stupid out of desperation. He feared Guznad would allow the gods to enter before his death as an act of revenge. Or, open the gate to the Abyss and allow an Abyss Prince, Tier 10 Abyss Lord to invade the plane. I was just going to ask about this, said Olivier, who also calculated this possibility as the war draws to its end. Do you have an estimate of when it will be ready? She asked. If you take into consideration time dilation between parallel timelines, it should be about 9 months, replied Edward after checking the progress reports the golems sent him. Of course, the time can be reduced if I can complete the monogrid enchantment. And how long will it take? I don't know. The thing should have been completed. But, it seems I'm missing an important piece. Edward shook his head. He already had all the information needed for the enchantment from the Akashic record, but he was still missing an important link. Well, we can wait a year. However, you have to expect more blackmail from Guznad. It's fine. He will repay it tenfold in the future, Edward sneered. Anyway, what's the second thing you wanted to talk about? Chapter 498, The Goddess of Magic. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. It's about the intelligence, said Olivier. The recent report states they have created a Tier 9 dark matter weapon. So fast? Well, based on the situation, it's expected. It's often difficult for any civilization to go from one Tier 1 to another. Frequently, they might spend millions of years without any success. A perfect example of this was the Elves and Starskin race, who once ruled over the Milky Way. They have been stuck as Tier 7-8 civilization for many years without any improvement. And it was the same for the intelligence. At their prime, they only had a Tier 8 antimatter weapon. However, in just a few months, after their civilization was destroyed, they reached Tier 9. All this improvement was because a higher being or civilization guided them in the dark. What do you want to do? Asked Olivier. Do you want to continue waiting? There is no point. The gods will never allow them to develop Tier 10 weapons. Furthermore, they are only pawns to muddy the current situation of the war. So, the best option is to control them now and get our hands on their technology before the gods use them as a chess piece. That's fine. Do you want to also intervene in the cosmic energy experiment? No, leave them to develop on their own. We only need to intervene after someone reaches Tier 6 and can leave the planet. Edward paused as he thought of something. If they develop a perfect system that can reach tier 6 with cosmic energy, invite them into the Empire. With the Empire's knowledge and resources, it's possible for someone from that planet to develop the cosmic energy system all the way to tier 10, thus expanding the Empire's arcane magic system. All right. Anything else? I should be the one asking that, muttered Edward. How is Tsuna? Has she been integrating well? Olivier did not respond but stared at him fiercely. Don't tell me you don't know. His wives do not care much for political power in the Empire, except for Olivier. So, she's probably the most powerful one, holding most of the Empire's military power and a great deal of political power. As such, she knows everything that's going on, including the movements of the others. So, if Edward wanted to know about something like that, she's one of the few people he could ask. She's fine. She has enlisted as a medic at the front line. What tier is she now? Tier 6. Mana or Chakrapath? Chakrapath, said Olivier with a frown. Edward Bones, since when was I in charge of keeping check of your harem and ensuring harmony? Don't be like this. If I don't ask you, who would I ask? Your shadow guards. They don't dare monitor members of the royal family. Olivier snorted coldly before hanging up the phone. Why are you antagonizing her? Asked Morgana, who appeared out of nowhere. I don't have to worry about the others. However, she's different. She doesn't seem like the kind to cause trouble. She's not, or she was not. What does that mean? I noticed a slight shift from her after I brought back Wiz and Tsuna. I worry she might do something stupid after letting all the power and success of the war get to her head. So, I'm warning her. Morgana looked at him with disdain. None of this would happen if you could keep it in your pants. Edward waved her away. What is the protection detail for Tsuna? He was worried an accident might happen while she was working on the front line. A tier 8 member from the Ghost Squad is always protecting her. She is also deployed near Dumbledore's floating city so that he can save her in case of an emergency. This might not be enough, muttered Edward. We have stored a piece of her soul flame. So, in case of an emergency, you don't have to worry. That's fine, nodded Edward before returning to his work. He wanted to find the problem with his enchantment as soon as possible. So, he dealt deeply with studying the mana grid. After 2 months of non-stop research, he finally discovered the source of his trouble. I was right. Someone branded the mana grid to prevent others from taking mana from it. Edward checked the brand, trying to decipher its owner. He prayed it was not the Magus race, which would indicate they still had some strong connection in the cosmic faith plane. Luckily for him, the situation was not as he anticipated. From the brand, he discovered a unique aura that was familiar to him. The divine aura from the soul of a god, muttered Edward, remembering the data he has after dissecting Herpo. This is interesting, he commented, wondering about his next course of action. His first instinct is to remove the brand. However, he had another idea, communicate with the owner. Since the gods will be my enemy, it won't be bad to know a thing or two about them. Of course, such an act was a double-edged sword since he might also reveal information about him. However, the risks were worth it, according to his calculations. Before then, let's take some precautions. Edward headed to Netheril and connected to the city. After his clone updated the energy core, this machine was numerous times more powerful than before. So, with it under his control, Edward was more confident in meeting the owner of the brand. The safest way would be to use Krona to communicate with the brand. However, it's best not to reveal the Empire's connection or even understanding of Krona. He shook his head before casting the spell that would allow him to communicate with the owner of the brand. Soon, he found himself in a large empty room. Not far from him was a beautiful woman with long black hair and golden eyes. She wore a blue robe with runes engraved on them. Who are you? Asked Edward. I should be the one asking you that question. Edward paused for a moment. I am Edward Bones, the Emperor of the Arcane Empire. The woman squinted her eyes. I am Delilah Magister, the goddess of magic, knowledge, and communication. Delilah, what a lovely name, said Edward, his blue eyes more charming than ever. Would you like some tea? I don't know what God drinks, but I think good tea is a universal beverage. Tea? It's been a couple of thousand years since I drank tea and even longer since I tasted a decent one. You better not disappoint me. I believe I won't, replied Edward, waving his hand to change the surrounding picture. They were now in a large plain with only green glass for miles long. A table was in the middle of the field with tea sets. Please, he motioned, his every gesture as gentlemanlike as possible. Delilah responded with a gentle smile. However, as soon as she smiled, the entire space became livelier. The sun shone brighter, the grass became greener, and the air was purified. Worthy of a goddess, thought Edward. Her natural charm is something even Fleur cannot compare to. Fleur studies charm magic, yet, her ability could not compare to Delilah's natural charm or disposition. I have to admit, in some ways, these gods are the perfect life form, analyzed Edward as he took his seat after the goddess. Chapter 499, Magic Authority. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. I've been meaning to meet you, said Delilah, sipping on her tea. Oh, why? I don't think I have anything worthy of being noticed by the gods. You know, sometimes, modesty appears as hypocrisy. Edward paused briefly. True. But, I'm genuinely surprised you know of me. In less than 100 years, you developed the Arcane Empire from a technological Tier 5 world to a Tier 9 magical civilization, calmly said Delilah. Such an act can be said to be the story of myths and legends. Ha ha ha, you have no idea how much your words have boosted my ego, replied Edward with a brilliant smile. However, Delilah did not take his words seriously. At first, I thought such a thing was impossible, that there might be some error in the information. She was in charge of the universe web, so she scoffed at the news for many years after reading it, believing there must be an explanation for such a grand scale of development. And now, I believe it. Oh, why? Because I can tell you're older than 100 years, said Delilah, her eyes deeper than the abyss, containing the most profound truth in the universe. For a moment, Edward was fascinated as he felt she could answer all the answers he wished to know about the universe. Luckily, his willpower is unmatched, and he knew a mere tier 10 gods could never give him all the answers and truths he pursued. I guess you acquired one of the Magus race's inheritance, including a time magical artifact. After studying it, you also absorbed their spirit of pursuing magic and the truth, thus creating the Arcane Empire. And with the technology civilization already on Earth, you decided to fuse magic and technology, thus bringing the Empire to an incredible height in a very short period. Am I right? Delilah gazed at him as if trying to pierce through the secrets of his soul. However, all she saw was calmness and a hint of flirtation. He's not just some wizard enthralled with magic and research, he's a true emperor with political skills. The Arcane Emperor rarely showed up during the war, mostly hiding behind the scenes. As such, the gods analyzed the information and believed he was primarily a political figure, albeit one with a lot of power. As such, their profile of him was a man addicted to magic and the pursuit of knowledge. Hence, he left his empire to be run by others, only keeping military power. However, Delilah discovered today they might have been wrong about the emperor. You can think so, replied Edward calmly. Is that so? Muttered Delilah with squinted eyes, making her even more alluring. Do you know what fate awaits you? Please, tell. She did not immediately speak, somewhat baffled by his calm demeanor. She could tell he was genuinely calm and not putting on a facade for their negotiation. We will never allow such an empire with your specific ideals and potential to develop. And once Guznad cannot protect this galaxy, our first act will be to liquidate the empire, killing or enslaving everyone. This is your unavoidable fate. And so, asked Edward, making Delilah frown with slight displeasure. Regardless, she knew how to control herself and continued. Your only hope of saving yourself and your family is if you surrender. Let me guess, added Edward. You want me to become your follower? No, your divine mercenary. As long as I give you all the Empire's knowledge and technology, especially the one I used to block the monogrid, you can intercept with the others to keep me safe. Am I correct? Delilah looked at him, his eyes focused intensely. Don't worry, I can't read your mind. You're just easy to read, easier than I anticipated. Are you calling me a simpleton? I would not dare, replied Edward casually. Let's not talk about some unknown future. You're the goddess of magic, correct? Yes, and what of it? Then, you must be the powerful god in this plane. Although I am powerful, I would not say to this extent, replied Delilah, wondering where this conversation was going. One of my philosophers excellently summarized magic. He said, magic is omnipotent, but the user is not. It's a great quote, nodded Delilah. Magic can do anything, its only limitation is the mage controlling it. I feel the same way. Imagine how powerful a person would be if they controlled the magic authority. They could topple the god civilization on their own. You're exaggerating things. No, I'm not. The core of the gods' civilization is the faith of their followers. So, if someone could develop a spell to block their connection to their followers, even for a moment, such a person could kill any gods and easily topple their civilization. Delilah's face changed for the first time since this conversation, albeit the process was very brief. But, it was long enough for someone like Edward. So, with a smile, he continued. Creating such a spell is quite arduous, even beyond the limit of what I could do. However, if I had the magic authority and with enough time, it's not out of the realm of impossibility. Such a spell is impossible, said Delilah, with a dangerous light in her eyes. And your attempt to sow dissonance amongst us is futile. Impossible? You're right, but it's not the reason, I think, isn't it? Asked Edward, his eyes as profound as hers, peeping deep into her soul. The gods are not stupid. So, how could they allow such a dangerous bomb among them? How could they allow anyone with the magic authority to exist and thrive in the universe? Small ripples appeared in Delilah's tea, however, her face remained the same. I have a theory to explain such an anomaly, said Edward. My theory is that these gods banded together to place some restrictions on the magic authority. They limited or even completely removed your ability to innovate and create new spells. I guess that they made it so that if you want to learn new spells, your followers must create it, without your aid, before sacrificing it to you. Am I correct? Boom! The tea in Delilah's hand evaporated, and the surrounding space trembled. However, Edward continued to sip his tea. I'm guessing that period was the darkest in your life. If things proceeded normally, you would have become one of the weakest gods in the universe, always suppressed. However, you're a wise woman, a woman of action. So, you somehow found a way to control the monogrid, thus elevating your strength and status. Delilah somewhat calmed down since Edward was wrong. To deal with that situation, she acquired the knowledge authority, thus blessing her followers to create better spells and magical knowledge. Her control of the monogrid and universe web placed her in the highest league among the gods, preventing them from putting more limitations on her. Arcane Emperor, are you trying to annoy me? Of course, I would never. Enough with this charade, said Delilah coldly. Although you tried to hide, I can sense your contempt for me, for the gods. I apologize for that, he said, sounding very sincere. I do disdain you lots, thinking you're only parasites that prey on the minds of the weak, less fortunate, or people in misery. However, I do wish to have a sincere conversation with you. What do you want? She continued, not hiding her anger and indifference. State your purpose. Chapter 500, Temptation. Harry Potter, Dimensional Wizard. I do not know you very well, but I can guess your story, said Edward with a calm and soothing tone. A human genius born on a planet of magic. You quickly rose to the top of your world, becoming a Tier 6 mage. Maybe you were the first one on your entire planet for hundreds of years. Or, maybe you were lucky enough to be born in a world with a developed magical civilization. Regardless, your achievement of reaching Tier 6 brought you untold fame, wealth, and power. Delilah glanced at him without saying a word. The previous anger was gone, replaced by a terrifying calmness. At least, it looked as such on the surface. Edward did not mind as he continued. After reaching Tier 6, you learn that this is the end of magic, for humans. However, how could such a genius like yourself accept such a fact? So, you began your journey through the universe. Maybe, you were lucky and discovered the astral realm and other planes. Through your ingenuity, talent, and luck, you pushed your magic to Tier 7. I'm guessing you used the bloodline of a higher magical creature, most likely, a dragon. Am I correct? Delilah only glanced at him without a word. Edward shrugged his shoulder and continued. At Tier 7, you finally reached the soul limit. Unfortunately, no matter what method you used, you could not bypass such restrictions. The only option you have is to use things like divine energy, but such an act is too dangerous. You probably searched the entire universe for the legacy of the Magus race during your attempt to break the limit. Sadly, your luck has run out. Disheartened, you finally gave in and chose the path that all humans have to eventually walk on, godhood. However, your love for magic was beyond any typical human, so you chose the magic authority, even though you probably knew the possible danger. Afterward, your story became as legendary as any others. Through hard work, talent, luck, and schemes, you slowly conquer other planes and become a Tier 10 god. You broke through the suppression of the gods and achieved the pinnacle of status in the cosmic faith plane. What are you trying to get at with all this nonsense? Asked Delilah coldly. I'm giving you an opportunity or an invitation. Delilah squinted her beautiful pupil. It's as you guessed. I'm inviting you to the Emperor. Abandon the wretched god path and become an arcanist, said Edward with an enchanting voice. Remove all your shackles, awaken your ambitions to pursue knowledge and magic. This is the biggest joke I've ever heard in my immortal life, said Delilah with a sneer. Is it? Retorted Edward with a smile. I'm sure your love for magic is not gone, otherwise, you would have never kept the magic authority. I don't know whether the Magus race used the monogrid as the universe web or whether it was your creation, but your involvement is indicative that you value information and communication. In my eyes, you're a perfect arcanist. And with your current soul, you can easily reach Tier 10 under our magic system. No, any magic system, for that matter. So, why are you willing to continue on this faith path, especially knowing how poisonous it is? How do you know about this? Asked Delilah with killing intent. The gods never allowed the information about faith to flow out. Do you think it is a deep secret? Said Edward with a sneer, silencing this beautiful goddess. Then, he continued. With the database of the Empire and your foundation as a god, you will have a much higher chance at reaching the legendary Tier 11. Delilah received another shock. Most creatures in the universe know or only believe that Tier 10 is the limit of power. After all, what is higher than the universe? However, this arcane emperor, ruler of a small empire smaller than a galaxy, knew of such secrets. The Magus inheritance he acquired is much more valuable than I thought Delilah, trying to hide her greed and desire. She took a deep breath to calm down while also pondering this man's words. Do you think a few words is enough for me to do such a thing, to take such risks? Of course not, replied Edward. You have reached the pinnacle of the universe in terms of strength and status. The status quo is in your favor, so why risk everything for an unknown future? Are you insinuating something? No, I'm directly stating it. After living so many years as a god, bathing in the praise and worship of trillions of creatures and countless worlds, your spirit to pursue magic has been diluted and corrupted. It's not your fault but an inevitable outcome. After all, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Delilah released a terrifying aura full of the intention to kill. The surrounding space created by Edward's spell shook, almost collapsing. There is no need for anger since it's the truth. Do you want to die? Let me ask you something, continued Edward calmly. If you were to meet your past self before achieving godhood, do you think she would recognize your current self? Delilah's aura fluctuated before calming down. She did not answer him, thinking about the question. Divinity is the enemy of magic. The reason is not something as simple as because the gods are more powerful and oppress the development of magic. There is a fundamental difference at their core between these two paths. Gods rely on keeping people ignorant to amass faith and keep their power. They have no choice but to do this because once people are enlightened, once they learn the secrets of the universe, they will understand that there is nothing unique or special about the gods. They will lose their awe and respect. And without those, how would you people gather faith? Edward did not hide his sneer and contempt. Even for someone like you with many mages as your followers, I reckon you've secretly eliminated many of your followers and divine mercenaries for studying taboo subjects, such as divinity. After all, you don't want them to discover the source of your power and threaten your status. Delilah's face became ugly. Edward's words finally hit a true nerve. She remembered the first time she sent the order to eliminate a bunch of her followers. She wiped out an entire empire in one of the planes she conquered, all because they were studying the divine flame. She spent many years conflicted as the mage and divine sides inside her fought together. Sadly, after doing it for the first time, the others were much easier. You don't know me, said Delilah, her eyes colder than ever. True, replied Edward with a smile. It seems our conversation has come to an end, he continued, noticing Delilah's desire to end this conversation. You should consider what I said. With the Arcane Empire's knowledge and your foundation as a god, we can achieve great things, unimaginable things, things that maybe even the Magus race has never accomplished. Delilah looked at him coldly before snorting. Then, she disappeared from the room. Outside the Milky Way. Delilah, is something the matter? Asked Morticia, the goddess of death, after seeing her open her eyes. Some bugs occurred in the universe web. Now, it's fixed. Is that so? Well, let's continue attacking this protection. I don't know why this thing suddenly became more powerful. Delilah nodded, a little distracted. She did not know why she lied but only acted on instinct. She took a deep breath to remove all these thoughts from her mind and contribute her strength to this endeavor.